My phone is face down on a towel. It has been buzzing for 6 minutes without stopping. 41 voicemails. I can see the edge of the screen lighting up the terry cloth, over and over, like something small trying to get out of a box. I am not going to pick it up. I am sitting on a beach on the island of Kauai. The sand here is warm all the way down, not just on top. There is a rooster walking across the parking lot behind me like he owns it. My husband is asleep in a folding chair with a paperback on his chest. And the last thing he said before he closed his eyes was that he had forgotten what it felt like to be bored. 4,200 miles away, in Traverse City, Michigan, 3 cars are parked in my driveway. The lights in my house are off, the curtains are open, the truck is gone from the garage. My sister is standing on the front step with 2 overnight bags and a plastic bin of breakfast food, calling my name through a locked door, and she still thinks I am inside. She thinks I am hiding. Here is what they did. 7 days, 3 shifts a day, 21 boxes on a laminated schedule, and my name typed into every single one of them. Nobody asked me. Nobody called. They printed it, they laminated it, and they stuck it on my mother's refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a cherry. And then they told me where to stand. But they do not know the worst part. Yet the lake house they have already divided up in their heads. The one they call the family compound. Closed with a new owner on the 30th of December. I want to be honest with you about something before we go any further. This is not a story about one bad Christmas. If it were, it would be short, and you would forget it by Thursday. 3 different sets of people took 3 different things from me, and each one was worse than the one before it. My brother and sister took a week. My mother took 9 years and $41,000. And the third one, the one I did not find out about until my plane had already landed, was the one that made me stop being sad about any of it. I found out in that order. Slowest first, worst last. It started with a piece of paper on a refrigerator door on Thanksgiving Day, and I want to tell you exactly how it happened, because I have gone over it 100 times, and I still cannot find the moment where I should have known. My alarm went off at 2:40 every morning of my adult life, and I was awake before it most days anyway. The bakery is called Blue Hour Bread. It sits in a low brick building on the south end of Traverse City, between a muffler shop and a place that rents kayaks in the summer and does nothing at all in the winter. I opened it in 2007 with a used deck oven and a loan I signed alone because Emmett was between jobs that year, and I did not want his name on it if it went under. It did not go under. That Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I got there at 10 after 3. Faye Brummett's car was already in the lot, running, headlights on, because Faye believes in warming up an engine the way some people believe in prayer. She has been my closest friend since 9th grade and my headbaker since 2014. And in all that time I have never once beaten her in 62, she said, when I came through the back door. 3 restaurants, plus the Kelseys, want an extra dozen rolls. Did you tell them yes? I told them you'd say yes. I hung my coat on the hook and put on the apron, the blue one that used to be navy and is now the color of an old sky, and I checked the starter. 11 years I have kept that starter alive. It has moved buildings once and survived a power outage that lasted 2 days, and I have fed it in hotel rooms out of a mason jar. Faye calls it the third partner. That morning it was up over the line I drew on the glass with a grease pencil, which meant the cold snap had not slowed it down at all. We worked without talking for the first hour. That is the part I have never been able to explain to anybody who has not done it. 3 in the morning in a warm room that smells like sourdough and hot metal. 1 radio on low. 2 people who know exactly where the other one's hands are going to be. Nobody needs anything from you. Nobody is calling. The oven door on the right side hangs a 1/4 inch low, and you shove a folded towel in the gap, and the towel has been there so long it has taken the shape of the gap. Around 4:30, Faye said, without looking up from the bench, "You told them yet?" "Told who? Don't do that. I scored the top of a loaf and did not answer. Greta, you've had the sign printed since September. The sign was in the office, face down on the desk. Closed December 20th through January 2nd. Happy holidays and thank you for 19 years. I had it made at the print shop on 8th Street and I had carried it out to my truck like it was radioactive. I told the restaurants in September, I said. They were fine. Danny said he'd order frozen from Cisco for 1 week and live with it. That's not who I meant. I know it was not who she meant. Here is the thing I want you to understand before anything else happens in this story. It was 19 years. 19 Christmases. I baked through every single one of them. And when I was not baking, I was at somebody else's house doing something for somebody else's children. And the two things fit together so neatly that nobody, including me, ever stopped to look at the seam. I want to be fair about it. Because being unfair would make this easier, and I do not want it to be easier. Nobody ever held a gun to my head. Every one of those 19 years, somebody asked, or somebody hinted, or somebody looked at me across a room with a certain expression, and every one of those 19 years I said the same word. I said sure. I said it the way you say it when the answer was decided a long time ago by somebody else, and you are only there to read it out loud. And then I would drive home at 11 at night with flour still in the creases of my knuckles, and I would tell Emmett it was fine. It was family. It was 1 week, and he would look at me and not say the thing he was thinking. Because he learned early that saying it made me defend them harder. This year was going to be different. And the reason it was going to be different was sitting in the cabinet above our stove at home, in a coffee can with the label peeled off and a strip of masking tape across it that said 25 in Emmett's handwriting. We started it in 2019. Every Friday. Whatever was in his truck console and whatever was in my apron pocket went in the can. 25 years married in June of this year, and the plan since the beginning was somewhere warm, somewhere neither of us had ever been. Somewhere I could not get to the bakery in under 11 minutes. Emmett called at 5, the way he does, from the marina lot before he goes in. "You up? I've been up for 2 hours. That's not what I asked. The marina goes quiet after the first week of November. He is the service manager, which in July means 11-hour days, and in December means shrink wrap, inventory, and a lot of coffee. That is the other reason people assumed things about us. 2 people with flexible Decembers, no children, a woman who owns her own shop and can therefore, apparently, close it whenever she likes, for anyone, at any time, for free. "I'm taking the week," I said. It came out flat, like I was reading it off a list. "I know you are." "No, I mean I said it out loud. To Faye. Just now." There was a pause on his end, and I could hear the wind coming off the bay. "Okay," he said. "Then it's real." I hung up and stood there with the phone in my hand and felt something I did not have a name for. It was not happiness exactly. It was closer to what you feel when a splinter finally comes out. Then the phone buzzed again. And it was the family thread, and my sister had just renamed it Sabo Christmas HQ. My mother has hosted Thanksgiving in the same house on Fern Street since 1978. The table is the same table. The tablecloth is the checked one that comes out twice a year. She still puts the good plates on the bottom shelf where nobody can reach them. And every year somebody has to get on their knees on the linoleum to hand them up. And every year that somebody is me. There were 11 adults there that day. My mother, Lorna Sabo, my sister Kendall and her husband Bram, My brother Dennis and his wife Pilar, my Aunt Roberta, who drove up from Cadillac and told everybody about the drive, two of Bram's cousins, Emmett, me. The children were in the basement with a movie on. I want to say that plainly and then leave it there, because what happened that afternoon had almost nothing to do with them, and I have never once blamed them for a single minute of it. Dinner was fine. Dinner was actually good. Emmett carved because Dennis says the knife hurts his wrist. And Roberta told the story about my father falling off the Krupa's garage in 1991, which is a funny story now, and was not one then. I brought 2 loaves and a pan of dinner rolls, and I did the dishes with Pilar. And Pilar dried, and we talked about nothing. And it was a normal afternoon in a normal family, in a normal house in northern Michigan. Then Kendall said, "Okay, everybody in the kitchen for a second." She was standing by the refrigerator with her arms crossed and that look she gets. Kendall runs on organization the way other people run on caffeine. She is a dental hygienist in Petoskey, and she has a label maker at home, and she once made a seating chart for a barbecue. I say that without cruelty. She genuinely believes that a plan is a kindness. On the refrigerator door, held up by the cherry magnet that has been on that door since before my father died, was a piece of paper. It was laminated. The edges were still warm. You could smell the machine on it, that hot plastic smell, sharp and a little sweet, and it was the smell I noticed before I read a word of it. Sabo Family Holiday Care Plan. 7 columns across the top, 1 for each day, the 19th through the 25th. 3 rows down the side, morning, afternoon, evening. 21 boxes. My name was in all of them. Not a first initial, not shorthand. Greta typed out 21 times, in a font she had bolded. There was a moment there, maybe 2 seconds long, where I honestly thought it was a joke. I looked for the part that was going to be funny. Sometimes people make a thing like that as a bit, and then everybody laughs, and then they tell you the real plan. Nobody laughed. Bram took a picture of it with his phone. "So this is the whole week," Kendall said, and she was already pointing, going box by box. "Mornings are easy. It's just breakfast and then they're on screens. Afternoons you'll probably want to get them outside. Evenings, honestly, evenings are the hard part. But you're good at that, Kendall. And obviously if it's a lot we can figure something out for the 23rd. Bram's mom might be around." "Kendall, I closed the bakery that week." She turned around and her whole face opened up, and I will remember the shape of it for the rest of my life. Because it was relief. She was relieved. "See, that's perfect," she said. "That's what I told Mom. You don't even have to ask off." I stood there with my hand still damp from the sink. I closed it to go somewhere. Go where? And I did not have an answer. That is the part that shames me even now. Sitting here with everything that came after, I did not have an answer. Because the can in my cabinet did not have a destination attached to it yet. And I had never gotten as far as saying a place name out loud. And so what came out of my mouth was, "We were going to take a trip." "Were," Dennis said, from the doorway. He had a beer and he was smiling. My brother is a regional rep for a plumbing supply distributor, and his entire job is being likable in the room. He is very good at it. "You can take a trip in February," he said. "Nobody wants to go anywhere in February. That's when you take a trip. Denny. I'm serious, it's cheaper. And the kids love you. You know they ask about you. My mother was at the counter putting foil over the pie. She had not said anything yet. She has never in her life raised her voice. And I think a lot of people mistake that for gentleness. Everything gets divided fair," she said, to the pie. "It always has in this family. Nobody responded to that because it was not really addressed to anybody. It was the sentence she puts down at the end of a conversation, the way you put a coaster under a glass. I reached past Kendall and I lifted the corner of the laminated page off the refrigerator and turned it over. There was a second schedule printed on the back. Bram's office party, the 26th, 7 o'clock, at the club in Harbor Springs, Boyne Mountain, 3 nights. Arriving the 22nd, 2 rooms held under Reinhold. Adults dinner, the 27th, 7:30, at the steakhouse in Petoskey. Party of 8. Party of 8. There were 11 adults in that kitchen. I read it twice. Then I let it fall back against the door and the cherry magnet caught it. "That's just the grown-up stuff," Kendall said. "That's not the plan." "Right," I said. And here is the sentence I have turned over more times than any other sentence in this story, because I said it, and nobody made me say it, and it came out of me smooth as anything. I said, "Okay." Emmett did not talk on the drive home. 22 minutes, headlights on wet asphalt, 1 deer at the corner of Hammond. He pulled into our driveway and put it in park and turned the key off, and then he sat there with his hands on his knees, looking through the windshield at the garage door. I waited for him to say something. He did not. He sat there for a long time. I did not sleep that night. I got up at 11:30, which for me is barely going to bed at all, and I went down to the kitchen and turned on the light over the stove and sat at the table with a legal pad. That is what I do. Other people call somebody. Other people cry in the shower. I write things down in columns, because a column cannot argue with you. I made 3 headings across the top. Year. Where I was. Who I had. 2007. The first year the bakery was open. Christmas Eve I baked until 4 in the afternoon, and then I drove to Kendall's and stayed with her oldest overnight because she and Bram had tickets to something in Grand Rapids. 2008. The same. 2009. My grandmother's birthday fell on the 23rd, and I drove her to Bel Air in the morning, and then went to Dennis's in the evening. I filled the first page and started the second. 2011 is the one that stopped my hand. That year, Emmett and I had actually gone somewhere. 4 nights in a rented cabin in the Hocking Hills in Ohio, which is not exactly the tropics, but it was 4 nights and it was ours. On the second morning, Kendall called. Her sitter had backed out and Bram's mother had shingles, and could I please, just this one time? We packed the car in 20 minutes. I remember Emmett folding the map we had brought and not saying one word about it, and I remember getting back on I-75 with the heater on high and telling myself it was fine, that we would go again. We did not go again. That was 15 years ago, 2016. My father died in March of that year, and at the funeral lunch at the church I left 40 minutes early because I had a wholesale order due at 5 the next morning and nobody else could do it. I stood in the parking lot of Emmanuel Lutheran in a black dress and my coat over my apron in the truck, and I drove to the bakery, and I made bread the night my father was buried. And my mother told me later that Roberta had said it was strange that I left. I put the pen down. I want to tell you why it took me 51 years, because I know that is the question. I know that is the thing people say. Why did you let it go on that long? Why did you not say something in 1990, in 2005, in 2011 when you were literally on vacation? I can tell you exactly why. And the answer is boring. And I think that is why it works so well. I was 11 years old when it started. Kendall was 7 and Dennis was 9. My mother went back to work at a title office in Bel Air, 40 minutes each way. And my father was up on somebody's roof from March to November and gone before dawn. Somebody had to be at the bus stop at 3:15. Somebody had to know where the bread was. Somebody had to make sure Dennis did his spelling and Kendall did not eat crackers for dinner. Nobody ever sat me down and gave me the job. That is the thing about it. There was no conversation, no promotion, no moment where I could have said no because there was never a question asked. It became true the way it becomes true that the oldest one carries the heavy end. My father noticed once. I remember it precisely because it happened one time in 18 years. I was 14 and I had Kendall in the bathtub and Dennis was crying about something and I was trying to get a casserole out of the oven with a dish towel because we did not have mitts. And my father came in from work and stood in the kitchen doorway with his hat still on and he said, "Greta, you don't have to do all that." That was it. He said that. And he set his lunch pail on the counter. And he went and washed up, and the next day he was on a roof again and I was at the bus stop again. He was not a cruel man, he was tired. But I learned something in that kitchen that I did not unlearn for 37 years. And it is this. Somebody can see it, say it out loud, mean it, and change absolutely nothing. And once you have learned that, you stop bothering to be seen. You just get faster at the work. By the time I was 30, being the one who handled it was not a role I played. It was the shape of me. When Kendall called, I did not decide to say yes. Saying yes was already installed. That is what I wrote at the bottom of the second page, in different handwriting, because my hand was shaking a little by then. 19 Christmases, not one of them mine. Emmett came down at 2. He stood in the doorway in his sweatpants with his hair flat on one side, and he looked at the pad, and he did not pick it up. "You want coffee?" he said. "It's 2 in the morning. I know what time it is." He made coffee. He put a mug in front of me and sat down across the table and turned the pad around with one finger so he could read the columns. And he read all of it. Both pages. Top to bottom. And it took him a long time. Then he asked me one question. "What are you going to tell them?" "I already told them." "Yeah," he said. I know. He drank his coffee. Outside the window, the neighbor's floodlight came on and went off again the way it does when a cat crosses the yard. Before I went up, I did one more thing. I crossed out the last line I had written. I drew one flat line through it, hard enough to dent the page, and I wrote something else underneath. I am not going to tell you what it said yet. I need to tell you about the group chat first. 3 days later, on the Sunday, Pilar sent me a screenshot by mistake. It came in at 9:40 in the morning. I was at the bakery finishing the wholesale run and Faye was wiping down the bench, and my phone lit up on the shelf above the mixer where I keep it so I do not get flour in the charging port. The image was a group text, not ours, a different one. I looked at the name at the top of it for a while before I understood what I was looking at. Adults only. There were 7 people in it. I counted the little circles twice. Kendall, Bram, Dennis, Pilar, my mother, Roberta, Roberta's daughter, who lives in Grand Rapids, and who I have seen maybe 4 times since 2010. 7. There were 8 of us in that generation if you counted me. The screenshot showed about 9 messages, and they were from the 11th of November, 16 days before Thanksgiving. Kendall had written, "Okay, so I'm doing the schedule tonight. I'll bring it Thursday." Dennis had written, "Just don't send it to her first." Kendall, "I wasn't going to." Dennis, "Because she'll find a reason. She always finds a reason." Kendall, "I know. That's why I'm printing it. If it's already made, she'll just do it." Bram, "Laminate it, lol Kendall, I'm literally laminating it." And then my mother, at 8:51 at night, in her own words, with the punctuation she always uses, which is a period after everything. "Lorna." She won't mind, she never does. I read it standing up. Then I sat down on an upturned dough tub and read it again. Faye came around the end of the bench with the rag still in her hand. What? I turned the phone around. She read it slower than I did. Faye reads everything slower than everybody, which is why she catches things. 16 days, she said. What? They planned it 16 days before. That's not a last-minute thing. That's not, oh no, the sitter fell through. She handed the phone back. That's a project. The phone buzzed in my hand while I was still holding it. Pilar, sorry, wrong thread. That was it, 4 minutes after she sent it. And that was the whole apology. Not sorry, you had to see that. Not sorry. That was ugly and I should have said something. Sorry, wrong thread. She was sorry about the aim. I did not answer her. I have thought about that a lot since, whether I should have. And I do not think it would have changed one thing. What I want to describe to you is what happened in my body, because it did not happen in the order I expected, and I think that order matters. The first thing was not anger. The first thing was shame. A hot, flooding, whole-face shame, the kind you get when you find out people have been talking about you. And it did not matter one bit that what they said was cruel. My immediate reaction, the one under everything, was that I had been caught. Caught being the kind of person you have to trick. She'll find a reason. She always finds a reason. Do you understand what that sentence means? It means they knew. Not one of them thought I wanted this. Not one of them was operating under some warm misunderstanding where they figured Aunt Greta loves having everybody around. They knew I would say no if I were asked. And so the solution they arrived at, together, over 16 days, in a thread I was not in, was to not ask. The second thing, and it took a good 10 minutes to get there, was the anger. It was very quiet. I want to be clear about that. I did not throw the phone. I did not cry in the walk-in. I finished the wholesale run, and I loaded the van, and I drove the delivery to the 2 restaurants downtown, and I made small talk with a line cook about the weather. And the whole time there was something turning over slowly behind my ribs like a stone in a dryer. Faye was still there when I got back, which she did not have to be. Can I say the thing she said? You're going to anyway. That's not asking a favor. She leaned against the sink. Greta, listen to me. When somebody asks you for help, you can say no. That's what makes it help. Nobody in that message thread asked you for anything. They're my family. I didn't say they weren't. Kendall's had a hard couple of years. Everybody's had a hard couple of years, Faye said. I'm not talking about hard. I'm talking about the fact that they made a schedule with shifts on it. Morning, afternoon, evening. Do you know what that is? I did not say anything. That's a staff rota, she said. That's what my brother-in-law hangs up at the car wash. Nobody had ever said it out loud to me before, in that many words. And the reason it landed the way it did is that it was not an opinion. It was a description. You cannot argue with a description. I stood in my own bakery at 11 in the morning with my apron still on, and I felt the floor tilt about 2 degrees. Before I locked up, I did something I had never done in my life. I opened the photos on my phone and I made a new album. You can name them whatever you want. I sat in the truck in the parking lot with the engine running and the heater blowing on my hands, and I typed in a name and saved the screenshot into it. I called it Receipts. I did not have a plan yet. I want to be honest about that too, because it would sound better if I told you I already knew what I was going to do. I did not. I had a screenshot of 7 people and a schedule with my name on it, and a coffee can in a cabinet, and a feeling I had never had before that was not quite courage. But that album is the reason everything after this worked, because from that Sunday on, I kept everything. Dennis called me on the 2nd of December at 4 in the afternoon. I was in the truck in the lot behind the bakery waiting for the cooler man to finish, watching the roll-up door on the storage unit across the way go up and down while somebody loaded a snowmobile. I let it ring twice before I picked up, which was new for me. "There she is," he said. "How's my sister?" That is how he starts. Every time, there she is. I'm sitting in a parking lot, living the dream. He laughed at his own line the way he does. Hey, quick thing about the compound. He calls it the compound. He has called it that since he was about 30, and he says it in a certain voice, half joking, so that if you ever pushed back he could tell you he was joking. It is 180 feet of frontage on Torch Lake, with a 1962 cottage on it that has never had a dishwasher. And he calls it the compound. What about it? We're doing New Year's up there, 20 or so people. Kendall's bringing the ham. I did not say anything. "So I'm going to need you to run up and open it," he said. "Water on. Check the furnace. Run the taps a while so the pipe's clear. Plow guy does the road but not the drive. So if you could get the drive, and we're going to need firewood. Like a real amount. Not a bundle from the gas station." The cooler man came out and gave me a thumbs up through the windshield, and I nodded at him. "When's the party?" 31st. But do the open up sooner, because if something's wrong with the furnace, I want lead time. So, this week would be great. I looked at the storage unit door. Up, down, up. Here is what I want you to understand about that phone call. Because on the surface, it is nothing. A brother asking his sister to open the family cottage. People do it every day, everywhere, and nobody writes anything down about it. It was the 17th time. Not a guess. I could tell you everyone. Every Memorial Day since 2014. Every 4th of July. Twice for graduation parties that were not mine and not for anybody I was invited to stay for. The time Roberta wanted it for her card club. The 2 years running when Kendall wanted it for a girls' weekend and asked me to leave the key under the propane tank and also to strip the beds after. And every one of those times, somebody drove 40 minutes up M72, and it was me. "Denny," I said, "can I ask you something?" "Shoot." "Do you remember the crib on the dock?" There was a small pause. Very small. "The what?" "The crib. The stone crib under the dock, the one that holds it up. It shifted in the ice in the winter of 21. The whole dock went about 9 inches out of true, and the inspector said if we left it another season it'd take the seawall with it." "Oh, yeah, that was a mess." "It was $11,000. "Was it that much? 11,000 and change? A crew out of Elk Rapids. They had to bring a barge." "Man," he said, "Grandma must have had more socked away than we thought." I sat there with the phone against my ear and the heater going. "Anyway," Dennis said. 4 seconds later. 4 seconds. I counted them afterward. "Listen, if you could do the drive-by like the 12th, that'd be great. Because I want to get the tree up there before the 20th. And he was gone into the next thing. I said I would take care of it. Of course I did. After he hung up, I sat in the truck for a while, and I did the arithmetic in my head. Not on paper, not yet. Property taxes on the lake place run about $9,400 a year, because Michigan taxes a place you do not live in at a different rate than a place you do. And because 180 feet of Torch Lake frontage is not what it was in 1962. Insurance, $3,100. And that is with a $2,000 deductible and no flood, because you cannot get flood out there for anything reasonable. Roof in 2019, $22,000, because you cannot put a cheap roof on a place that gets that kind of ice load. Septic in 2022, $9,400. Dock crib in 2021, 11,000. And the small ones nobody counts. The well pump, the chimney liner, the tree that came down on the shed, gutters, plow contract, the propane fill every October, which I set up on autopay in 2015 and have never once mentioned to anybody. I did not add it up that day. I want to be exact with you. I sat in that parking lot and I could feel the shape of the number, the way you can feel the shape of a word you cannot remember. But I did not add it up, because some part of me knew that once I had a total, I would have to do something with it. What I did instead was drive home and take the accordion file down from the shelf in the utility room. Every receipt is in it, every invoice, every tax statement, in order going back to 2014, which is the year my grandmother turned 79, and handed me a paper grocery bag full of unopened mail and said, "I can't see the numbers anymore, honey." She was 81 before she admitted she could not drive to Bel Air either. I put the file on the kitchen table and I did not open it. Not that night. That night, I only looked at it. The way you look at a door you already know you are going to walk through. Grandma must have had more socked away than we thought. That is the sentence I fell asleep to. The email came on Thursday the 4th at 10:20 at night. Subject line Holiday Week Info. Attachment 7 pages. I opened it at the kitchen table with Emmett next to me and the laptop turned so we could both see. He had come in from the garage with his hands still cold and he was holding a beer he had not opened. Page 1 was a schedule inside the schedule. Wake times. Breakfast windows. What time the morning shift transitions to the afternoon shift, with an actual arrow drawn between the two rows. Page 2 was food, not preferences, requirements. One of them will not eat anything that has touched onion. And there was a note in parentheses explaining that this includes onion powder, and another note under that explaining that, yes, she has checked, and yes, it includes the seasoning on the frozen potatoes. Page 3 was allergies. That page I did not mind. That page is the one page in the whole document that a person could defend, and I want to say so because I am not trying to make them into monsters. There was an epinephrine injector location and a dosage and a phone number for the pediatrician's after-hours line, and every bit of that was correct and necessary, and I would have wanted it. Page 4 was screens 2 hours a day, and a list of what was allowed inside those 2 hours, and a separate list of what was allowed only if it had already been a hard day. Page 5 was bedtime. Bedtime had a routine with 6 steps in it, and the steps were numbered. Page 6 was a list of phone numbers, and page 7 had 3 lines on it. I have it printed out. I kept it, obviously, because by then I was keeping everything. The first line said the house should be picked up before drop-off in the morning because it starts the day better. The second line said that if we go anywhere in the car, text the group so people know. The third line said this: if you need to leave the house for any personal errands, please give us 48 hours notice so we can arrange coverage. Emmett read it out loud. Then he read it out loud again, slower, and after the word coverage he stopped and did not say anything else. 48 hours notice. I sat there and I looked at that sentence and something in me went very quiet, not loud. Quiet. The way a room goes quiet when the furnace shuts off and you did not know until then that you had been listening to it. You do not say that to your sister. You say that to a person who works for you. That is a shift coverage policy. That is the language of a schedule board in a break room, of somebody who has to find a body to stand where your body was going to stand. That sentence assumes, without 1 second of doubt, that my time between the 19th and the 25th of December belonged to a pool that other people drew from, and that if I wanted a piece of it back, I had to file for it in advance. And here's the part that I did not see clearly until much later. Sitting on a plane. They were not wrong. That is what made it unbearable. That sentence was not a lie about me. It was an accurate description of the arrangement as it had actually operated for 37 years. Somebody had finally written the arrangement down, in a font, in a document with page numbers, and the reason it hit me in the chest like that is that it was true. I have been asked since whether that was the moment I decided it was not quite, but it was the moment the ground moved. Emmett closed the laptop. He did it gently, which is worse than slamming it, because he is a gentleman, and I have only seen him truly angry maybe 5 times, and every single one of those was about something that happened to me and not to him. "Okay," he said. "Don't." I didn't say anything. You said, "Okay." He turned his beer around on the table a half turn. "I've been quiet about this for 25 years. I know. I've been quiet because every time I said something, you defended them, and then you were mad at me instead of them. And I'd rather be quiet than be the guy who made you cry about your own mother." He set the bottle down. "So, I want you to notice that I'm not saying anything now either," I said. "I know what you're not saying." "Good." We sat there. The furnace kicked back on, and then I asked him a question that I did not plan, that arrived out of nowhere the way the true ones do. And my voice sounded strange saying it. "Emmett, how much do you think it's worth?" He looked up. "How much do I think what's worth?" "The lake." He did not answer right away. He is not a fast man. He is a man who reads the manual all the way through before he opens the box. And I have watched him do it with a $100 chainsaw and a $4,000 outboard. "Why?" he said. "I'm asking." "No, you're not," he said. "You never ask a question you don't already know the shape of." I got up and I put my mug in the sink and I stood there with my back to him and my hands on the edge of the counter. "There's a folder in the utility room," I said. "Grandma's stuff. The paperwork from the house. I've had it since March and I've never gone through it." "Okay. I'm going to go through it." Behind me, I heard him stand up, and I heard the chair go back under the table, because he always pushes it in. "Want help?" "No," I said. "I want to do this one alone." The folder was on the top shelf of the utility room behind a box of canning lids. It is an accordion file, the brown kind with the elastic cord, and it had been sitting there since the 2nd week of March, when I cleaned out my grandmother's room at the care home in Kalkaska and came home with 2 grocery bags and a shoebox and did not have it in me to open any of them. I brought it down to the laundry room floor and sat with my back against the dryer, because the light in there is good, and because I did not want to be at the kitchen table for this. The first pocket was medical. I skipped it. The second pocket was the funeral home, and the death certificate, 3 certified copies, and the little envelope of thank you cards nobody sent. The third pocket was the house. There was a hand-drawn survey from 1962 on paper, gone the color of weak tea, with my grandfather's handwriting on it, marking where the well was. There was a receipt for the original lot, $680, from a man named Vogel. There were photographs, a whole envelope of them. My grandmother standing in front of a stud wall in a headscarf with her hands on her hips. And underneath all of it, in a plastic sleeve, was a deed. I had seen it once before. That is the truth, and it does not make me look good. October of 2009. My grandmother asked me to drive her to Bel Air on a Tuesday, and I did. And she went into an office on the 2nd floor of a brick building on Cayuga Street, and I sat in the truck for 50 minutes with the radio on, because she said it would be quick. On the way home, she had a manila envelope on her lap, and she was in a good mood, and she stopped for a fried chicken dinner at a place that has since burned down. In the driveway at her house, she handed me a photocopy and said, "Put that somewhere you'll find it." I put it somewhere I would find it. I did not read it. I was 34 years old, and I had a bakery 2 years old that was not yet making money, and a husband and no children. And my mother had been on the phone with me for an hour the night before about Kendall's divorce, and an old lady handing me a photocopy in a driveway did not register as an event. 17 years later, I sat on a laundry room floor and read it. It is 2 pages. The recording stamp is in the upper right corner. Purple ink gone brownish. Antrim County Register of Deeds. October 2009, with a Lieber and page number. There is a strip along the bottom of page 1 where the paper is a slightly different white because somebody made a correction. The correction was my name. Whoever typed it had put Novotny with an A. Somebody had drawn a single line through it in blue ballpoint, written Novotny above it in small print letters, and there in the margin were 2 sets of initials. One set was mine, which I do not remember writing, and one set was hers, that shaky WS she used on everything, on the back of photographs and on the tags she sewed into things she altered. The words in the middle of the page I read maybe 11 times, reserving unto the grantor a life estate, and below that, in the same paragraph, remainder in fee simple absolute unto Greta Marie Novotny. I did not know what those words meant. I want to be extremely clear about that, because there is a version of this story where I am a woman who knew exactly what she was holding, and that version is not true, and it would make me look smarter than I am. I am a baker. I know what 40 pounds of flour costs, and I know how to read a wholesale contract, and I know what a lien is because I have signed a loan. And I did not know what a life estate was. What I knew was that there were two names on that piece of paper, and one of them was mine, and none of the others were, not Dennis, not Kendall, not my mother. I sat on the floor with the dryer humming against my back, and I read the whole thing again from the top, slowly, out loud, whispering it. And when I got to the end, I put it down on the linoleum and put both hands flat on my knees. Emmett was in the doorway. I do not know how long. "Whose name is on it?" he said. "Grandma's." He waited, and I looked up at him. "Say it out loud. Greta. Mine." He came in and crouched down and picked up the pages by the edges the way you pick up something old. And he read them himself, both sides, and then he set them back down. "What's a life estate? I don't know. Neither do I." We stayed there on the floor of the laundry room for a while. 2 people in their 50s who did not know a thing about property law, with a document between us that had been sitting behind a box of canning lids for 9 months. Then I did the only useful thing I could think of. I got my phone and I took a picture of both pages, front and back, and I put them in the album I had made. And I looked at the top of page 1, where there is a small block of print, the kind that says who drafted the instrument, prepared by Ferris Lance, attorney at law, Cayuga Street, Bel Air, Michigan. The office my grandmother walked into in 2009, while I sat in the truck listening to the radio. I called the next morning at 9 o'clock, expecting a disconnected number, expecting a dead man. A woman answered on the second ring and said he could see me on the 8th. The last big bake before the holiday shutdown is always the 5th of December, because that is when the 2 clubs and the church do their orders and everything has to go out at once. We started at midnight instead of 3. Faye came in with a thermos and a bag of clementines and put both on the shelf by the mixer like it was a normal thing, and we did 410 pieces of laminated dough between midnight and 4 in the morning. and I have never in my life been so grateful for physical work. There is a thing that happens in a bakery at that hour that I have tried to describe to people and always fail at. The windows go black and you can see your own reflection in them, and the room gets so warm that you have to prop the alley door with a brick, and the cold comes in at ankle level in a flat sheet, while the top of the room stays at 80 degrees. You stop thinking in sentences. You think in the next motion: fold, turn, rest, fold, turn, rest. Emmett showed up at 4 with coffee from the gas station on Garfield, which is the only thing open, and he sat on an upturned tub with his boots out in front of him and watched us finish. "How many is that?" he said. 410. "You want me to do the delivery run? You have work name? I have shrink wrap," he said. "Shrink wrap can wait." Faye pulled the last sheet, set it on the rack, and dropped onto the other tub, and for about 20 minutes the three of us sat there in a warm room at 4 in the morning with nothing left to do. Faye said, "Tell him about the Hollins order." "He doesn't want to hear about the Hollins order." "I want to hear about the Hollins order," Emmett said. So she told it, which is annoying because she tells it better than I do. 2 winters ago, the woman who runs the diner out on the corner of M72 lost her mother in January, and she called on a Tuesday completely wrecked, saying she had to close for a week, and Faye took the call. And I said no, do not close. And I made her rolls and her pie shells and her bread for 9 days and drove them out myself before 6 every morning, and I never invoiced her. 9 days, Faye said to Emmett. $200 and some a day in product. Never sent a bill. "I know," Emmett said. "I did the books that quarter." "You never said anything," I said. "No," he said, "I didn't. And I want to put that in here on purpose, next to everything else, because I do not want you to come away thinking I am a woman who never gives anything to anyone. I gave that away, and it was mine to give. Nobody scheduled it. Nobody laminated it. That is the entire difference, and it took me 51 years to be able to say it in one sentence." Emmett said, "Tell her about the can." "She knows about the can." "Tell her anyway." So I did. 2019. The March after the winter the furnace at the bakery died twice, when we were both so tired we were snapping at each other about nothing. Emmett came home one night with an empty coffee can, peeled the label off in the sink, put a strip of masking tape across it, and wrote 25 on it in carpenter's pencil. He did not explain it. He put it in the cabinet over the stove, and every Friday after that whatever was in his console went in it, and whatever was in my apron went in it, and we did not count it once in 7 years. "How much do you think is in there?" Faye said. "No idea." "That's very unlike you." "I know." Then my phone rang. 4:20 in the morning. "Kendall, I want you to understand that my sister was not calling at 4:20 in the morning because of an emergency. She was calling at 4:20 in the morning because she knows exactly what time I am at work, and because she has always considered my working hours a convenient window in which to reach me, and because in her mind she was doing the efficient thing." I picked it up. "Hey, sorry. I know you're baking," she said, fast, cheerful, already 3 sentences into her own agenda. "I just want to lock the 19th. Bram's got the thing in the afternoon, so we'd drop off around 9 and it'd be through dinner. And I told Mom I'd confirm it with you tonight, but I forgot, so..." Faye was looking at the floor. Emmett was looking at me. And here is where it happened. I did not raise my voice. I did not bring up the group chat or page 7 or the 21 boxes or 19 years. And it is important to me that you know I did not, because that is not what this was. I said, "I can't do the 19th. There was a beat. "What? I can't do the 19th. "I have plans that week." Kendall laughed. Not meanly. That is the part I have never quite gotten over. She laughed the way you laugh when a coworker says something dry, and she said, "Okay, funny. So, 9 o'clock. Kendall, I'm not doing the week. Another beat, longer. We'll talk about this later," she said. "You're tired. Call me when you're done." And she hung up. That was it. That was my first no in 51 years. And it took 11 words. And my sister filed it under tired and hung up the phone. I set the phone face down on the bench. Nobody said anything for a second. Then Faye reached over and took a clementine off the shelf and started peeling it, very calmly, and said, "So, what are your plans that week?" "I don't know yet." "Greta, I untied my apron. "But I'm driving up to the lake tomorrow. You take M72 out of town and then you go north on the east side of the lake. And there is a stretch about 2 miles long where the trees break, and you see the water all at once. Torch Lake in December is a color I have never been able to name. In July it is that turquoise thing that ends up on postcards, the one that makes people from downstate pull over onto the shoulder to take pictures. In December, with a low sky and no boats, and the shore ice just starting at the edges, it goes a kind of deep green blue that looks like it is lit from underneath. It was not frozen yet. It rarely is by the 6th. I drove up on Sunday the 6th of December with a bag of salt, a flashlight, and a thermos. The cottage sits at the end of a 2-track with a bend in it, so you do not see the house until you are almost on top of it. 180 feet of frontage, cedar shakes gone silver. A screen porch my grandfather built onto the lakeside in 1971, and a back door that has never latched right in my lifetime. Nobody had been in it since the middle of October. The first thing you get when you open that door in winter is the smell of cold ash. The fireplace draws badly, and there is always a little in the grate, and it sits there all season, and it is the first thing your nose finds. After that comes the mothball smell from the closet under the stairs, and then, underneath both, the cedar. I did the list, turned the main valve, ran every tap until it came clear, flipped the breaker for the furnace and stood there while it coughed and groaned and settled, pulled the sheets off the furniture, salted the walk. And then I did the thing I always do, which is that I stopped working and I walked around the house. I did it slower this time. Out front, on the roadside, there is a blue spruce. It is close to 50 feet now, and it leans about 6 degrees toward the water, and it has a bare patch on the north face where the ice storm in '94 took a limb off. My grandmother planted it the spring I was born. She told me that maybe 40 times in my life, always the same way, always as if she were reporting a fact about the tree and not a fact about me. She would say, "That tree, and you are the same age." And then she would go back to whatever she was doing. In the kitchen, the drawer to the left of the sink is the drawer everything goes in. Rubber bands, a church key, 2 flashlights that do not work and one that does, batteries of every kind, loose. And in the back of it, that day, my hand found paper. There were 2 bundles. The first was letters, 11 of them, in envelopes, held with a rubber band that broke when I picked it up. All the same handwriting, tall and slanted and very legible. The handwriting of somebody who has spent a career writing on a board. All postmarked Kalamazoo. All addressed to Mrs. W. Sabo at the Torch Lake address. The oldest one was 2015. The most recent one was August of this year, 5 months after she died. And it had been forwarded and then returned and then forwarded again, and somebody had finally left it in the mailbox at the cottage. The return address on every one of them said Blue Spruce Lane. I stood there in a cold kitchen holding 11 letters written to a dead woman by someone who lived on a street named after the tree in her front yard. and I did not open a single one that day. I am not sure why. I put them on the counter. The second bundle was Christmas cards, 17 of them, one a year, going back. And I know it was 17 because I counted them twice in the truck later. They were the cheap kind you buy in a box of 25, and every single one had the same signature at the bottom. In blue pen, Del M, that was all. No last name spelled out, no return address, no note longer than 2 lines. Thinking of you this season. Hope the water was good this summer. Del M. I did not know anyone named Del. I put the cards on the counter next to the letters and I went upstairs. The upstairs of that cottage is one long room under the roofline with 2 beds and a rag rug, and at the far end, under the window, is a cedar chest. I have known that chest my whole life. It has a brass hasp with a slide bolt, no lock. And my grandmother kept quilts in it. When we were kids, we were allowed to take the quilts out and not allowed to climb in. It has been in the same place under that window since before I could walk. I put my hand on it and I did not open it. I want to tell you that I had a feeling. People always say that afterward. The truth is I was cold, and it was getting dark, and I had a 40-minute drive, and I told myself I would come back for it. I went back downstairs to shut the breaker box, and that is when I saw the paper. It was taped to the inside of the panel door, where you would put a note about which breaker runs the pump. Yellow carbon copy, the kind that comes off a triplicate pad, curled at the corner. Appraisal appointment, Torch Lake Drive, 8:15 in the morning, dated the 19th of August of this year. Requested by D. Sabo. My grandmother died on the 11th of March. I stood in front of the open breaker panel with a flashlight in one hand and that yellow slip in the other. And behind me in the walls, the water was moving through the pipes for the first time in 9 months, ticking and knocking as it went, filling a house that had been empty since fall. I did not call anybody. I did not take a picture of it, which is the one thing in this whole story I would do differently. I peeled the tape, folded the slip in half, and put it in my coat pocket. So that is the first part, and I want to be clear about where it left me, because it did not leave me where you probably think. I drove up to that lake to turn the water on for my brother's party. That was the errand. Open the house, salt the walk, buy firewood, like a real amount, not a bundle from the gas station. And I came down that 2-track with a yellow carbon slip folded in my coat pocket that had my brother's name on it and a date 5 months after we buried our grandmother. I was not angry yet. I want to be accurate about that. I was confused, and I was cold. And I had a 40-minute drive to think about a word I did not know the meaning of. But that slip of paper is not what changed my life. What changed my life was upstairs, in a cedar chest I had walked past for 51 years, and it had nothing to do with my brother at all. It was about my mother. I went back up the next afternoon, the 7th. I opened the chest at 4 in the afternoon. The hasp on that chest sticks. You have to lift the lid a 1/4 inch and slide the bolt at the same time. I did it the way I have done it since I was 6, and the smell came up at me, and for a second I was not 51. On top were the quilts, 3 of them, the log cabin one and the 2 plain ones, folded in thirds with tissue between. Under those, a roll of dress patterns and a rubber band. Under that, a hat box with no hat in it, holding photographs loose, hundreds of them. The kind nobody ever put in an album. Under the hat box was a tin, butter cookies, Danish, the blue one everybody's grandmother had. It was full of buttons and a tape measure and 4 pairs of scissors, and underneath the tin, flat against the cedar, was a spiral notebook. I knew that notebook before I picked it up. She used the same kind her whole life, the narrow ruled ones with the marbled cover, and she wrote in them with a ballpoint pen she kept clipped to the neck of her house dress. That is how she ran her alterations business from 1968 until her hands went name, item, date in, date out, amount, every hem, every wedding dress, every pair of trousers, 40 years of it. This one was newer. The cover was still stiff. The first page said, in her handwriting, in pen, at the top, one word, house. Then a line. Then, underneath, a 2-column list. And the first entry was dated April of 2017. April 2017. K. 2100. D. 2300. To L. Under that, October of the same year. The same 3 pieces. 2 names, 2 numbers, and where it went, then 2018, then 2019, twice a year, spring and fall, every year, in the same hand until about 2023 when it got shakier and then stopped being a list and became a scrawl. I sat down on the end of the bed with the notebook on my knees and I read every line. 9 years, 18 entries. The amounts went up. By 2024 it was $3,200 from Kendall and $3,400 from Dennis, twice a year. And there was a note in the margin next to one of them that said one word, cash. At the top of the second page, above the columns, she had written 4 words in slightly larger letters, and I did not understand them the first time I read them. For the upkeep, per L, for the upkeep. I turned to the back of the notebook, because that is where she always wrote things that were not accounts. She used the last 3 pages of every notebook for what she called her own business, which meant grocery lists and phone numbers, and once, in the one from 1988, a note about my mother that I will not repeat here. The last written page in this one had 4 lines on it. The pen had skipped in 2 places. I am going to give them to you exactly. Elle says the kids are paying in for upkeep on the house. She takes it. I did not ask anybody for the dollar. I do not know where it goes. Then a space. Ask Greta what she pays. She won't tell me. The date under it was February of 2025, 13 months before she died, which means she wrote it in the nursing home in Kalkaska, in a room with a window that looked at a parking lot, with that same ballpoint, at 90 years old. And then she closed the notebook and somebody brought it back to the cottage with the rest of her things and put it in a cedar chest under a tin of buttons. I sat on that bed for a long time. Let me lay it out the way I laid it out for myself. Driving home, at 55 miles an hour on a road I have driven 400 times. Twice a year. For 9 years. My mother collected money from my brother and my sister. She told them it was for the upkeep of the lake house. They gave it to her, in cash, at least sometimes. She wrote none of it down herself. The only reason there is any record at all is that a 90-year-old woman with a spiral notebook was in the habit of writing things down and could not break the habit even when the thing she was writing down was about her own daughter-in-law. And in all 9 of those years, in all 18 of those transactions, not $1 of that money ever passed through my hands, which matters because I am the one who paid the bills. Every single one. The tax statement comes to my house in Traverse City because I changed the mailing address in 2014 when she handed me a grocery bag of unopened envelopes and said she could not see the numbers anymore. The insurance renewal comes to my house. The propane is on auto pay on my card. The roofer in 2019. The septic company in 2022, the barge crew out of Elk Rapids in 2021, me, my checkbook, my name on the memo line. So where did it go? I did not know then. I do not know all of it now. And I am not going to pretend I do, because I never got a real answer, and I'm not going to invent one for the sake of a tidy story. What I know is what is in that notebook, and what is in my accordion file. And the two of them do not touch anywhere. I put the notebook in my coat, inside, against my chest, which is a strange thing to do, and I did it anyway. I closed the chest. I slid the bolt. Then I went downstairs and out to the truck, and I got in, and I put the key in the ignition, and I did not turn it. I sat in the driveway of my grandmother's house in the dark for 15 minutes with my hands in my lap. I was not crying. I want to be accurate. I was doing arithmetic. We did it that night at the kitchen table with the accordion file open and a calculator between us. Emmett had a legal pad and a mechanical pencil, and he made 3 columns. Because he has been married to me for 25 years, and he has learned year, what, how much. I read them out and he wrote them down. Property taxes. That is the biggest line, and it is the one people never think about. Because when you say a lake place, people picture the water and not the winter tax bill. 2014, $7,100. It climbed every year after. By this year, $9,400 and change. Because Michigan taxes a place you do not live in differently than a place you do. And because 180 feet of frontage on that particular lake is not what it was when my grandfather paid $680 for the lot. 12 years of that. Emmett added it twice because he did not believe the first number. Insurance. $3,100 a year now. Less in the early years. And that is with a $2,000 deductible and no flood coverage. Because you cannot buy flood out there for a price a person would pay. Then the big ones. The roof. 2019. $22,000. You cannot cheap out on a roof that gets that ice load. And the estimate from the outfit that wanted to do it for $14,000 had a hand-drawn diagram on it that made Emmett laugh out loud. The dock crib, 2021. $11,000. Barge, crane, 3 men, 4 days, the septic, 2022, $9,400, because they had to bring the field forward from the old location, and that meant taking out 2 cherry trees that had been there since before I was born. And then all the ones nobody counts, which I read off receipts, one at a time, and he wrote each one down without commenting. Well, pump. 2016, $2,800, chimney liner, 2018, $1,900, the tree on the shed, 2020, $3,200, and the shed after, gutters, the plow contract, $400 a season, 12 seasons, propane, an average of $1,600 a year on auto pay. On my card. Since 2015. It took an hour and 10 minutes. When we got to the bottom, Emmett drew a line under it and added it up on the calculator and did not say the number. He turned the pad around and slid it across the table, $116,000. Neither of us said anything for a minute. I want to tell you what that number is, because a number by itself is just a number and you can put it in one ear and out the other. That is what my husband and I earned in about a year and a half. After taxes, in a good year and a half. That is the loan I signed alone in 2007, 3 times over. That is every Friday for 7 years in a coffee can. Times a great many. I did not resent paying it. I need you to hear that too, because it is the whole hinge of this. I paid those bills for 12 years, and I never once wanted anything back for it. Not thanks. Not half. She raised my father. She taught me to work a seam ripper. She was the only adult in my childhood who ever sat down when she talked to me. The roof was not a favor. It was just a thing that needed doing. And I could do it. So I did. The problem was not the money going out. The problem was the money coming in, because here is the arithmetic that I could not put down. $41,200. That is the total from the notebook. 9 years, 18 entries, my brother and my sister, spring and fall, for the upkeep on the house. And every dollar of the actual upkeep on the house went out of my checking account. So there were 2 families' worth of money moving around a single building, and one of them was real and invisible, and one of them was fictional and had a bookkeeper. Emmett said, "Where'd it go? I don't know. Do you want to ask her?" And I sat with that for a while, because it was a fair question, and it was the question a normal person asks. Here's what I said. And I remember it because of the way he looked at me after. "No," I said. "I don't want to know badly enough to go ask. Greta, I mean it. If I call her and ask, one of 2 things happens. Either she has an answer and it's a lie and I have to sit there and decide whether to call my mother a liar on the phone, or she doesn't have an answer, and she cries. And then I'm the one apologizing by the end of the call." I put my hands flat on the table. I have had that phone call 400 times. I know how it ends. It ends with me saying sorry. He did not argue with me, but I have thought about that answer for a long time since, and I have come to think that it was not strength. It was the same thing that let it all happen for 37 years. Wearing a different coat. I was not choosing not to fight. I was still, at 51 years old, arranging the furniture so that nobody would have to have a feeling in front of me. The difference, and the only difference, is what I did next. I looked at the pad. 116,000 on one line, 41,200 on another, and between them a whole house I had never once thought of as mine. And I heard myself say a sentence out loud that I had never said in my life. I need to find out whose name is on that house. Emmett capped the pencil. "You already know whose name is on it," he said. "You read it on the laundry room floor." "I know what it says," I said. "I don't know what it means." "So find out what it means." The appointment I had made 4 days earlier, on a whim, from the laundry room floor, was for 9:30 the next morning. I had spent every one of those 4 days looking for a reason to cancel it. I did not find one. The building on Cayuga Street has a stairwell that smells like radiator dust, and a hand-lettered sign in the front window for a chiropractor who moved out in 2012. The elevator has an out-of-order sign on it, old enough to be yellow. So you take the stairs, and at the top there is a door with frosted glass and gold lettering, and inside there is green carpet the color of pond moss. Ferris Lance is 68 years old, and about 6'3", and he stands up too fast for a man that size. He wears a cardigan under his jacket. He shook Emmett's hand, and then mine, and then he said, "Sabo." Not as a question, just placing it, the way people up here do. "My grandmother," I said. "Wilhelmina." "Willa," he said. "I know, I saw it in the paper in March." He gestured at the chairs. "Sit down. I'm sorry, I should have written." I put the deed on his desk in its plastic sleeve. He did not pick it up right away. He put on a pair of readers and looked at it flat on the blotter, and turned it with one finger, and read the whole first page before he said anything. "Yes," he said. "This is mine. October 2009. I don't know what it means. I know you don't. Most people don't." He took the readers off. "Do you want the short version or the whole thing?" "The whole thing." So he gave it to me, and I am going to give it to you the way he gave it to me, because he was careful and because getting it wrong is how people end up in trouble. He said your grandmother owned this property outright. In 2009, she signed a deed that did 2 things at the same time. It gave away the ownership of the property, and it kept back for herself the right to live in it and use it for the rest of her life. That is what a life estate is. She was the life tenant. She could stay there until she died, and nobody on earth could put her out. He said the person who gets the ownership when the life tenant dies is called the remainder man. In this document, that is you. One name, no one else's. He said, and here is the part people find hard to believe. When she died in March, the ownership did not have to go anywhere. It became yours in 2009. What ended in March was her right to occupy it. No waiting, no court. You record a certified death certificate with the county and the chain is complete, I said. So it never went through the estate. It was never in the estate, he said. That is the whole point of doing it this way. A will only moves what a person actually owns on the day they die. On the day she died, she did not own that house. You did, Emmett said. What did the will move? Then, I didn't write the will, Lance said. But if it was drawn the way most are, it moved whatever was left. And I knew what was left, because I had cleaned out the room in Kalkaska with my own 2 hands in March. A 12-year-old sedan with 91,000 miles on it, a savings account with $4,200 in it, a cedar chest, 3 quilts, a tin of buttons. That was the estate. That was what got divided fair. Then Lance did something I did not expect. He got up, went to a lateral file behind his desk, pulled the second drawer, walked his fingers back through the folders, and came out with one. He set it down and opened it, and there was the original of my deed, and behind it, 2 sheets of a legal pad in blue ink. I keep a memo of the meeting, he said. Always have. Some of the fellows don't anymore. He turned it around so I could see, but he read it to me himself. October 6th, 2009. Client W. Sabo, age 74. Presented alone, drove herself. No one accompanying. Discussed options. Client declined to divide the property among 3 grandchildren. He stopped and looked up. She was very clear about that. I offered it. I always offer it. Most people want it split, and then 20 years later the split is the problem. He went back to the page. Client stated reason for naming a single remainder man. Recorded at client's request? Recorded at her request. She wanted it in the file, he said. She wanted somebody to be able to look it up later. Her words were, and I wrote them down because she said them twice. And then he read it, in a flat lawyer's voice, off a legal pad from 2009. She's the only one who ever pays for the roof. I want to describe what happened to me, and I do not have very good words for it. It was not the house. I had been sitting in that chair for 20 minutes being told I owned a piece of Torch Lake, and it had not touched me anywhere. It went past me like weather. It was that sentence. Because in October of 2009, the roof I paid for had not happened yet. That was 10 years away. She was not talking about a roof. She was talking about the shape of a person, the way you can watch somebody for 30 years and know which one of them will be standing there when a thing needs doing and no one is watching. She saw it. She saw all of it. She never once said a word to me about it in my whole life, and she drove herself to Bel Air, alone, at 74 years old, and had a lawyer write it down. I put my hand over my mouth and sat there in a green-carpeted office and cried in front of 2 men I barely knew. And Ferris Lance slid a box of tissues across the blotter with 1 finger and looked out the window until I was done, which I appreciated more than I can tell you. When I could talk, I said, "Somebody made an appointment to have it appraised in August." He raised his eyebrows. "That'd be a neat trick," he said. "She was 5 months dead in August. His name is on the slip. Lance put the readers back on and folded his hands. "Mrs. Novotny," he said, "what is it you want to do?" And I said the honest thing, which was that I did not know. It took me 3 days to decide, and I did not decide at the kitchen table. I drove up alone on the 10th, told Emmett I was going to check the furnace, which was true and was not the reason. The wind was out of the northwest that day, so the shore ice had broken up again and the water was slapping the crib in that flat, hollow way it does in December. I did not go in the house. I walked around the side, down the 14 railroad tie steps my grandfather built into the bank, and out onto the dock. And I sat down on the crib. $11,000, barge, crane, 3 men, 4 days. I had never once sat on it. I want to walk you through what I thought about out there, because if I skip it and go straight to what I did, it sounds like a decision made in anger, and it was not. First, I made myself list what the place actually was to me, not what it was worth, what it was. It is where I learned to swim, off the old wooden dock that rotted out in the 90s. It is where my grandmother taught me to darn a sock over a light bulb. It is the porch where my father slept the summer he and my mother were not speaking, in 1989, on a cot, and nobody ever explained it, and nobody had to. It is the kitchen where Willa fed me a whole cherry pie for supper on my 12th birthday because she thought birthdays should be strange. That is a real list. Those are real things. And they happened in that building, and no money changes any of them. Then I made myself make the second list. What has that place been for the last 12 years? It has been a venue. Memorial Day. 20-something people. And I open it. 4th of July. 30 people. And I open it. And I buy the propane for the grill. And I am the one who notices the septic alarm going off at 11 at night. 2 graduation parties. Neither of them for anyone who invited me to stay. Roberta's Card Club. Kendall's Girls Weekend, twice. Key under the propane tank. Strip the beds after. 17 times. I told you I could count them and I can. And in 12 years I have slept in that house 4 nights. All 4 of them alone. All 4 of them because I had driven up to deal with something that broke. Here is the question I asked myself, sitting on that crib with my hands in my coat pockets. If I keep it, who am I keeping it for? Not for my grandmother. She is dead, and she had the chance to leave it to the 3 of us, and specifically told a lawyer no. Not for me. I cannot use it. The family calendar has it booked from Memorial Day to Labor Day and always has. And if I showed up in July and asked for the place to myself for a week, I know exactly what the phone calls would sound like, not for the next generation, and I will say this once and then leave it alone. There is no next generation of mine. That was not a choice I got to make cleanly, and I am not going to open that up here, but it is a fact, and it sat there on that dock with me. So the honest answer was that if I kept it, I would be keeping it for Dennis and Kendall and my mother. I would be the custodian. I would be the one who writes the check so that other people can have summers, and the arrangement would run exactly as it had been running, except now I would know that I owned it, and I would have to decide, every single year, whether this was the year I said something. And in August, 5 months after we buried her, my brother had an appraiser out. That is the piece that stopped me talking myself in circles. I could argue about ingratitude, about whether I was being dramatic, about whether $116,000 was a favor I chose or a bill I was handed. I could not argue with an appraisal appointment on a house that was not his. You do not have a house appraised because you love it. I sat out there until my hands hurt. Then I climbed the 14 steps and got in the truck and drove home. And I came in through the mudroom, and Emmett was at the stove making eggs at 4 in the afternoon, which is what he does when he does not know what else to do. I said, I'm going to sell it. He turned the burner down. He did not say congratulations, and he did not say, are you sure, and he did not say think about it. He took the pan off the heat and set it on the trivet, and he came around the counter. Okay, he said. That's it. Okay, Greta, I've been waiting since 2001 for you to want one thing out loud. That's not fair. It's not an insult. He leaned against the counter. Are you doing it to hurt them? I thought about it. He deserved a real answer, and I gave him one. No, I said. I'm doing it because if I don't, I'm the caretaker for the rest of my life. And I'm 51. And I've got maybe 15 good years of standing on a concrete floor at 3 in the morning left in me. And I am not spending them being the one who writes the check for a place I'm not welcome at. He nodded slowly. Then he said, How much is in the can? I don't know. Want to find out. And that was the moment. If there was one. Not the dock, not the lawyer's office. My husband in a flannel shirt at 4 in the afternoon, asking if I wanted to count the coffee can. I said, Not yet. There's something I have to read first. The 11 letters were in my truck. I had set them on the counter up there, and then, on my way out the door, I had picked them back up without deciding to, the way you pocket something you are not finished with. I went out to the driveway in my coat and got them off the passenger seat. Then I sat down at the table and opened the oldest one. The oldest letter was dated the 9th of August, 2015. Dear Mrs. Sabo, my husband and I have rented the Ferron place next door to you for the last 2 summers. I am the one who waved from the beach with the terrible sun hat. That is how it opened. I read the first 3 lines and I laughed out loud in an empty kitchen, which I had not done in about a month. It went on for a page and a half. They were both teachers. They came up the last 2 weeks of July. Her husband had spent an afternoon watching my grandfather's boathouse door because he wanted to know how the hinge worked, and then she got to it. In one plain sentence near the bottom, if you ever think about selling, we would like to be the first people you talk to. That was it. No offer, no number, no agent letterhead. The second one was August 2016. Same thing, warmer. She mentioned that they had watched a storm come across from the west side and that her husband had said out loud that he wanted to die in a chair on that porch, and that she was sorry. That was a grim thing to put in a letter. But there it was. 2017 mentioned the raspberries. There is a hedge of them at the back of the lot where the mowed part gives out. They are wild and they are seedy and small, and they mostly go to the birds. Willa never did anything with them. But the letter said, We picked a coffee can of your raspberries this year, and I want to confess it, and I made 4 jars of jam, and they were not very good either. 2019 had a photograph in it. It was a picture of the blue spruce, taken from the road, in July. Bad angle. Somebody's thumb in the corner. On the back, in that tall, slanted handwriting, your tree is doing better than my knees. By the 6th letter, I had stopped reading them as a stack of documents and started reading them as what they were, which is 11 years of a stranger writing to an old woman once a year and getting, as far as I could tell, nothing back, because that is the part I had to sit with. My grandmother never answered. There was no correspondence here. There were no letters from her in this stack because she did not write any 11 Augusts. One woman put a stamp on an envelope, and one woman put the envelope in a kitchen drawer next to the rubber bands, and she kept every single one. The last one was this year, August, 5 months after the funeral, forwarded twice, then left in the mailbox at the cottage by somebody at the post office who probably knew Dear Mrs. Sabo. I am not sure if you are still up here or if the family has the place now. We are not renting the Farron house this year. Our daughter got married in June and it ate the summer. I wanted to write anyway because it has been 11 years and it seems wrong to skip. Then, at the bottom, we sold our house in Kalamazoo in September. We are living in a rental on Blue Spruce Lane, which my husband thinks is a sign, and I think is a coincidence. If the answer is no, it is no. And I will stop writing. But I would rather ask 100 times and be told no than not ask. Ruth Ann Sokol. A phone number. I called it the next morning, on the 11th, at 10:15. It rang 3 times. Hello. Is this Ruth Ann Sokol? It is. My name is Greta Novotny, I said. I'm Willa Sabo's granddaughter. There was a silence on the other end of that phone that went on long enough that I checked the screen to see if the call had dropped. Then she said quietly, When March the 11th. Oh, she said. And then, Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not usually like this. We talked for 51 minutes. I want to give you the shape of it, rather than all of it. She was 59 and had run a high school choir for 26 years and retired in June because the district cut her program to a half position and she was not going to watch it die by inches. Her husband is Peter. He is 61. He taught shop at the same school, and he has been building a canoe in a garage for 2 years. She told me about the 11 letters, and she was embarrassed about them, and she said, I want you to know I wasn't circling. I know how it looks. Every summer up here, somebody's getting a card in the mailbox from an agent. You didn't send a card from an agent. No, she said. I sent a letter about raspberries, which is arguably worse. Peter got on. He asked me 2 questions, and they were both about the septic. Then he said, We sold the Kalamazoo house in September. It's in the bank. There's no financing on our end, and there's no house to sell first. I'm telling you that up front because I don't want you sitting there wondering. And then the thing happened that I did not expect and have never quite gotten over. I did not know what to ask for. I had never sold a house in my life. I had a number in my head that I had gotten off a real estate website at 11 o'clock at night, and it was a number I was half embarrassed by. I said, I don't know how to do this part. And Ruth Ann said, Then let me go first, because I've been thinking about this for 11 years. She said a number. It was $240,000 more than the number in my head. I did not say anything for a second, and she took it wrong. That's what the Doyle place went for in May, she said quickly. 2 lots down, 10 less feet of frontage. And theirs doesn't have a boathouse. We're not trying to steal it from you. Peter looked at every sale on that shore since 2023, I said. That's more than I was going to ask. I know, she said. That's why I went first. Then she was quiet, and then she asked me one more thing. And her voice changed when she asked it. Can we keep the tree? I had to put the phone down on the table. Grand Traverse title is in a strip building on Munson Avenue between a hearing aid place and a Thai restaurant. And there is a bowl of individually wrapped mints on the counter that I would bet money has been refilled from the same bag since 2019. Bettina Cruza is 55 and has reading glasses on a chain and a laminated card taped to her monitor with everybody's extension on it. And I noticed the lamination and had a small, ugly moment about it, and then let it go. Because a title office is exactly where lamination belongs. We opened escrow on the 10th of December. I brought everything, the deed in the plastic sleeve, 3 certified death certificates, the tax statements, the whole accordion file because I could not decide what she would want. She took the deed and the death certificate and gave me back the rest. Antrim County, she said, looking at the recording stamp. October '09. That's a clean one. Is it? It's cleaner than most. She put it on the scanner. I want to set your expectations on timing, because everybody asks and everybody's answer is different and most of them are wrong. The buyer being cash doesn't make it fast. That's the thing people believe. Cash removes one delay. It doesn't remove the one that matters. What's the one that matters? Title search, she said. Somebody has to go back through the chain on this parcel and make sure there's nothing hanging on it. A lot in town is 3 or 4 business days. Waterfront is old and split off from bigger parcels. And half the time there's a right-of-way to the water that somebody's grandfather granted a neighbor in 1968 and then recorded. On a lake parcel, we say 7 to 14 business days and we mean it. I did the arithmetic on my fingers under the desk. That puts us past Christmas. It puts us right at the end of the month if nothing shakes loose, she said. If something shakes loose, it puts us into January. And then she looked up over the glasses. Are you in a hurry for a reason, or in a hurry generally? I said. Both. She did not ask me what the reason was. I have thought about that since. There is a particular kind of professional discretion that people in small towns have, where they know perfectly well that something is going on and they decline to make you say it, and Bettina Cruz had it in quantity. We signed the purchase agreement on the 15th, the so-calls signed in Kalamazoo and sent it up, and Emmett and I signed at that same desk on Munson Avenue at 4 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, with the sun already gone. $2,340,000, no listing agent, no buyer's agent, nobody's 6% because there was nobody to pay it to. Ferris Lance reviewed the agreement for a flat fee that he had to be talked into raising. The closing date on the contract was the 30th of December. Bettina put her pen down and said, Now, you said you're traveling. We are. Where? Hawaii. She wrote something on a sticky note. Michigan lets you close remotely. It's been on the books since 2018. You'll need a device with a camera, a decent connection, and your driver's license in your hand. The notary is online, the session gets recorded, and it's as good as sitting in that chair. That's it. That's it. People think there has to be a room. She peeled the sticky note off and handed it to me. There doesn't have to be a room. Then she asked me, in the same voice she had used for the easements, Are you going anywhere nice for the holiday? And I said, Yes. That was the first time I said it out loud to somebody who was not my husband. A stranger in a title office asked me a polite question and I gave her a one-word answer, and something in my chest turned over. Faye never asked me a single question. That is the thing about her that I do not deserve. I told her on the 16th that I would need her to run the whole shutdown and the reopening, that I would be gone from the 24th to the 5th, and that I would explain later. She said, okay. She did not say where. She did not say why. She did not say what about your sister. On the 18th, she handed me a paper sack across the bench and said, 2 seated and a pain de mie. Airplane food is a war crime. We counted the can on the 17th. We dumped it on the kitchen table and it made a noise like a slot machine, and there were 4 crumpled 20s in the bottom that neither of us remembered putting in. $3,190, mostly in quarters. 7 years of Fridays. The tickets were $4,860 for the 2 of us. First class. Booked 8 days out, which is the most expensive way a person can possibly buy an airplane seat. We put the can money against it and paid the difference on the card. And I want to be honest that I felt sick doing it, because I have never in my life spent that kind of money on a chair. Emmett watched me hover over the button. Greta. I know. 2.3 million. I know. It's not about that. I know it's not. He reached over and pushed my hand down onto the mouse. That's why I said it. Detroit to Honolulu. 8:05 in the morning on the 25th. Connection to Lihu. I printed the confirmation on the ancient printer in the spare room, and I carried it into the kitchen, and I took a magnet off the side of the refrigerator, and I stuck it up. I stood back and looked at it. A piece of paper on a refrigerator door. I want to tell you I planned that. I did not plan it. I did it, and then I saw what I had done, and I stood in my own kitchen at 9 at night with my hand still up in the air. That night the family thread went off at 10:40. Kendall had sent the schedule again. The same photograph of the same laminated page. Resent. With 3 exclamation points. And the words, "It's 1 week out. Everybody check your day." I looked at it for a long time. Then I typed 2 words and put the phone face down. Got it. We packed at night, and we packed in the wrong building. That sounds paranoid. It was not paranoid. Kendall has a key to my house, which she has had since 2010 when we were both taking care of my father, and she uses it. She does not text first. She comes in through the side door, calls out from the mudroom, and puts something on the counter. Twice this fall it was a casserole dish she wanted back. Once it was a bag of clothes for the church drive. So on the 21st and the 22nd, after 10 at night, we brought the suitcases to the bakery and put them in the dry storage room behind the flour, and I locked the door with the key that I have carried on my belt loop since 2007. I do not know how to explain what that felt like without sounding worse than it was. It felt good. Not triumphant, not clever. It felt the way it feels when you find a place to put something down. Here is what I packed, and I am telling you because of one item. 2 pairs of shorts I had to buy, because I owned 0 pairs of shorts. Sandals, same. A swimsuit that I bought at 11 at night on the internet, and that I did not try on until we got there. Sunscreen. The paperback Emmett has been carrying around since October and has not finished. And a linen shirt, pale blue, short sleeves, that has been in the back of my closet since 2019. I bought it that spring, on clearance, at a place in Petoskey, for a trip we did not take. I have taken it out 4 times in 7 years and put it back 4 times. Because there is no occasion in Traverse City between October and May for a short-sleeved linen shirt, and because every summer it got hot and I was in a bakery. I stood in the bedroom at 11 at night on the 22nd with that shirt in my hands, and I laughed, out loud, alone, in the dark, folding a shirt. That is the closest thing to joy that happened in the whole month of December. My mother called on the 23rd at 10 in the morning. I was in the truck outside the bakery. I let it ring twice. "Hi, Mom." "Well, hello, stranger." That is how she opens. It is a joke, and it is not. She talked for 11 minutes. I know it was 11 because it is in my phone. She did not mention the schedule, not once. This is the thing about my mother that Kendall and Dennis have never had to learn how to handle, because they have never been on the receiving end of it. My mother does not confront and she does not defend. She speaks past a thing until the thing has to either come up on its own or die of neglect. And in 51 years I have watched almost everything die of neglect. She talked about the church. She talked about a woman named Dolores who had a hip done. She talked about the weather, which was going to be bad on the 24th. And then she said, "I've been thinking, we ought to get a picture this summer. All of us up at the lake, out on the lawn before we lose anybody else." I looked at the loading door. "That'd be nice," I said. "Because that's the thing. Greta, that place is the last thing we've got that's all of ours." A pause. Everything gets divided fair. That's how it's always been in this family. There it was again. Second time in a month. I had two choices in that moment, and I picked one, and I have never been sure it was the right one. I said, "Mom, do you remember who paid for the roof 3 seconds?" I counted them, sitting in a cold truck with my hand on the shifter. 1, 2, 3. Then she said, "Oh, honey, I don't keep track of any of that. Your grandmother had her own arrangements." And she went straight into the weather again. Snow starting late on the 24th, 4 to 7 inches. And did I know that Dolores's son had to drive down from Sault Ste. Marie in it? I want to tell you exactly what I understood in those 3 seconds, because it is the entire second act of this story, and I do not want to overstate it or undersell it. She did not say what roof. She did not say when. She did not say, "I don't remember," or which one, or was that the lake or the house on Fern. She said she did not keep track of any of that. You cannot decline to keep track of a thing you have never heard of. That answer only works if you already know exactly what is being asked, and it was ready, and it came out smooth, which means it was not the first time it had been in her mouth. My mother worked 22 years at a title office in Bel Air. She sat at a front desk, and she handled the paperwork that comes in and out of that kind of building, and she knew, better than any of her children, what a recorded instrument is and what it means and where you go to look one up. She knew. She has known since 2009. I sat in that truck after she hung up, and I did not feel the thing I expected to feel. I had spent 3 weeks expecting anger, and it did not come. What came was quieter and worse. I felt embarrassed for her. That night, Emmett came out to the garage where I was standing with the suitcase scale, weighing a bag that did not need weighing. "You okay?" She knows, yeah. You knew she knew. "I've known since about 1994, he said. "But you had to get there yourself or it wouldn't have counted. We stood there under that one bulb." He said, "Are you going to tell anybody before?" And I said, "No, nobody." Then I heard myself add something. "One person," he waited. "Faye," I said. "She's running my shop. She should hear it from me and not from my sister." He nodded and he took the scale out of my hand. And he said the only unkind thing he said in the entire month, and it was not aimed at me. "Good," he said. "Somebody in this should get told something first." I told Faye at 3 in the afternoon on Christmas Eve, standing in the walk-in with the door propped because it was the only place in the building where you can say something and not be overheard. I gave her the key ring. Front, back, alley, dry storage, the safe. "I know," she said. "You already gave me these." "These are the good ones. Those were the spares." She looked at the keys in her hand. "Greta." "Where are you going?" So I told her, all of it, in about 4 minutes, standing between the milk and the butter with our breath showing, the schedule, the screenshot, page 7, the notebook in the cedar chest, Ferris Lance and the memo from 2009, Ruth Ann Sokol and the raspberries, $2,340,000 and a closing date of the 30th. Faye did not say a word the entire time. When I finished, she put the keys in her apron pocket, and she put both hands over her face, and she cried, standing up in a walk-in cooler for about 15 seconds. Then she took her hands down and she was laughing. 21 boxes, she said. 21. I know. You're going to be on a beach. I'm going to be on a beach. Greta Marie. She grabbed the front of my apron with both fists and shook me about 2 inches. "You send me a picture. I don't care what of. I want a picture from that beach on Christmas Day, and I want to be looking at my phone when it comes in." I promised her. I did send it, and I will get to that. We left at 9 o'clock that night. The snow had started around 6, the way the radio said it would. And by 9 it was doing that thing where it comes at the windshield in horizontal lines, and your eyes want to follow it. Emmett drove. We had the 2 suitcases in the back seat because I did not want them in the bed in the weather, and the paper sack from Faye on the console, and 2 gas station coffees that were both bad in different ways. 4.5 hours to Detroit, down US 31 to Cadillac, then over, then south on the interstate the whole rest of the way. We did not talk much for the first hour. Then somewhere south of Clare the snow quit all at once, the way it does when you come out from under the lake effect. And the road went dry and black and the sky opened up. And Emmett put the radio on and found an AM station out of Toledo that was playing the same 11 Christmas songs everybody plays, and he sang along and got the second verse wrong on every single one of them. I want to put that in here on purpose, because if you have been listening to this and you have been waiting for the part where I say I felt powerful, this is as close as it gets, and it is not powerful. It is a 54-year-old marina mechanic singing the wrong words to a song about a snowman at midnight on I-75 with a paper sack of bread on the console. We stopped once, at the rest area past Bay City, and I stood outside in the cold for 2 minutes because I wanted to. Here is what was already done. Before we ever got in that truck, the purchase agreement was signed on the 15th. The title commitment came in on the 22nd, 2 days before, and it came back clean, which Bettina told me on the phone was not a given on a parcel that old. There was one thing, a 1968 utility easement along the road frontage, and it was recorded and it was fine, and it had been there longer than I had. The closing was set for the 30th. Nobody had to be in Michigan for it. Not the Sokols, who were going to be at their daughter's in Ohio. Not me. And here is what I left behind. Not a letter. I thought about a letter. I sat down twice to write one, and both times I got about a page in, and it turned into a list of grievances with dates on it, and I did not want that to be the thing sitting on my table. I left an envelope. Inside it was one sheet of paper. It was a photocopy of the laminated schedule, both sides, front and back, printed on the same page so you could see them at once. 21 boxes with my name in every one, and underneath it, on the same sheet, the office party at the club in Harbor Springs, and 3 nights at Boyne, and dinner for 8 in Petoskey. That was all. No letter, no explanation. Across the bottom, in blue pen, in my handwriting, I wrote 3 words. I am not going to tell you what they were yet. You will hear them in a minute, out loud, in my sister's voice, and it lands differently that way. We turned off the lights at 8:50. Emmett went around and checked the back door twice. The last thing I did before I went out was look at the refrigerator. Our flight confirmation was still on it, under the magnet, and next to it were the things that have been on that door for years. A photo of the 2 of us at the marina picnic, a business card for a plumber, a church bulletin from a funeral. I did not take the confirmation down. I thought about it. I stood there in my coat with the truck running outside, and I thought, somebody is going to come in here and see that, and they are going to know exactly where we went. And then I thought, good. The hotel by the airport gave us a room on the 4th floor overlooking a parking structure. We got in at 1:40 in the morning. I set an alarm for 5:15, and I lay in the dark with my eyes open for a while. I did not feel guilty. I have been asked that more than any other question, and the answer is no. And the reason is not that I am hard. It is that at some point in the last 3 weeks I had run out of a thing I did not know was finite. I fell asleep around 2. An airport on Christmas morning is one of the strangest rooms in America. We got to the terminal at 6:20. Half the shops had the metal grates down. The moving walkway was running with nobody on it. There was a man in a Santa hat pushing a floor scrubber and a woman at the coffee place who told us, unprompted, that she had volunteered for the shift because it paid double and she does not have anybody local. The people who fly on Christmas Day fall into about 4 groups, and you can tell them apart from 30 feet. There are the ones going towards something, and they have the good coats, and they are calm. There are the ones going away from something, and they are on the phone. There are the crews, and there are the people who look like us, which is to say, 2 people in their 50s in fleece jackets, who had clearly never done this before, and kept checking a printed piece of paper. Boarding was at 7:35, Group 1. I want to say something about the seats. I sat down in one of those seats and I did not know what to do with my hands. A young man came by and offered me a glass of something before we had left the gate. And I said, "No, thank you." And Emmett said, "Yes, please." And then when the young man was gone, Emmett looked at me and said, "You paid for it. Drink it." I did not drink it. It was 7:40 in the morning. But I put my hands on the armrests, and I sat back, and I looked out a small oval window at a wet runway in Detroit, Michigan, on the 25th of December. And I thought about what the day was supposed to look like. It was supposed to look like this. 9 in the morning at my house, 2 vehicles, bags on the front step, a cooler, the morning shift, which per page 1 runs until the afternoon transition. 21 boxes and my name in all of them. At 7:58 I put my phone in airplane mode. That is a very small physical action. Your thumb moves half an inch. I did not turn it back on for 11 hours. I need to describe that correctly, because if I get it wrong it sounds like hiding. And it was not hiding. Hiding is when you are afraid of the person who is looking for you. I was not afraid of anybody. What it was this. For 37 years, there has not been a single hour of my life in which I was not reachable. Not one. I have taken calls on a bakery floor at 4 in the morning, in a hospital hallway, at my father's funeral, twice in a dentist chair. My phone has been on the shelf above the mixer, face up, for 19 years. Because what if? What if is the whole thing. That is the entire mechanism. Nobody ever had to require me to be available. They only had to make sure I believed something might go wrong that only I could fix. And at 7:58 in the morning on the 25th of December, sitting in a chair I had bought with 7 years of quarters, I moved my thumb half an inch and made myself unavailable to every person I am related to. The wheels came off the runway at 8:11, 6 minutes late. I did not cry. I turned my head to the window and I watched Detroit go small and gray and then disappear under cloud. And my hands were shaking a little in my lap. And Emmett put his hand over both of them and left it there and did not say anything for a long time. Somewhere over what I think was Nebraska, he opened the paper sack. We ate Faye's bread on that airplane. 2 seeded rolls and a slice of the pain de mie, torn, no butter, out of a sack on a tray table in first class. And the young man came by and asked if he could take anything, and Emmett said no thanks. We brought lunch. And I laughed so hard the woman across the aisle looked over. 9.5 hours to Honolulu, then 40 minutes on the ground and a small plane over to Lihue that is barely long enough to get to altitude. The door of that second plane opens onto stairs. Not a jetway. I have thought a lot about how to say what happened when that door opened, and I do not have anything better than the plain version. The air came in. It came in warm and heavy, and it smelled like wet green and salt, and something flowering that I could not identify then and now know was plumeria. In Michigan on the 25th of December, the air is a thing you brace against. It has an edge on it. You come out of a building and your body tightens up before you have thought about it. This air did not have an edge. I stood at the top of those stairs for about 3 seconds. which is 1 second too long when there are people behind you, and my whole back came down off my shoulders where it had been living since November. Emmett said, from behind me. Move, honey, we got the rental. We drove to the place on the North Shore, which is not fancy. It is a 2-story building with 8 units and a gravel lot and a chalkboard by the office with the tide times on it. Second floor, end unit. A balcony with 2 plastic chairs and a wooden table with a leg somebody had shimmed with a folded matchbook. I put the suitcase on the bed and I did not open it. I went out on the balcony instead, in my fleece jacket, in 81 degrees, and I stood at the rail. It was 6 o'clock in the evening, Kauai time, 11 at night in Michigan. I took the phone out of my pocket and I turned airplane mode off. The little wheel spun, the bars came up one at a time. Then the screen went white and then it started, and it did not stop. And it went on, and I stood there holding it while it counted. 41 voicemails, 206 text messages, and 1 photograph, sent at 9:04 in the morning, Michigan time, from my sister, of 2 overnight bags and a plastic bin sitting on my front step in the snow. So that was the leaving. And I had been telling myself for 3 weeks that the leaving was the hard part. I was wrong about that. The leaving took 4.5 hours on a dry interstate, with a man singing the wrong words next to me. The hard part was standing on a balcony 4,200 miles from my own kitchen, with a phone in my hand that would not stop counting. 41 voicemails. I listened to all of them, not that night, 2 nights later, straight through, no skipping. And in the middle of them, buried at number 38, my mother said one sentence that she did not mean to say, and it cracked the whole thing open, because there was a 3rd layer under this. And it had been sitting there since January of last year, and nobody in my family was ever going to tell me about it. A woman I had never met told me instead. On the phone. On the 31st of December. But before any of that, I have to tell you about 7 o'clock in the morning in my own driveway, and I was not there for it, so I am going to tell it the only way I can. In their voices. The first voicemail came in at 7:04 in the morning, Michigan time. I have the timestamps. That is the only reason I can lay this out for you in order. And I am going to, because I think the order tells you more about my family than anything I could say about them. 7:04. Kendall. Background noise, a car engine, a door chime, wind. Hey, we're here. We're a little early. Your lights are off. Are you at the bakery? Call me. That is the whole message. Her voice is completely normal, slightly amused. The voice of a woman standing in a driveway at 7 in the morning who has assumed, correctly for 37 years, that the person she is looking for is somewhere nearby doing something for somebody. 7-Eleven? Kendall again. Okay. The truck's gone. Bram says maybe you went for milk. We're going to unload. Is that okay? It's cold. They unloaded onto my front step. That is the picture she sent at 9:04. 2 overnight bags, a plastic bin, and behind them the storm door with the wreath on it that I hung on the 6th of December because I hang it every year on the 6th of December. 7:26. Kendall. Her voice has changed. Not angry, confused, which is worse to listen to, honestly. I called Faye. Faye says you're not at the shop and the shop's closed. She said she doesn't know where you are. Greta, I need you to call me back, because I have to be at Bram's mother's at 8:30. There it is, 7:26 in the morning, and the operative fact is that she has to be somewhere at 8:30, 7:40. Bram. Very reasonable. very calm, using the tone men use when they think a situation needs a level head applied to it. Hey Greta, just call your sister. She's getting worked up. 7:52. My mother first message. Greta, it's your mother. Call the house. 9 words. That is my mother. She has never left a message longer than 15 words in her life, and I could pick that particular flat delivery out of a room of 1,000 people. 8:11. Dennis. First one from him. All right. Joke's over. Call somebody. 8:19. Kendall. She is crying now. And I want to be careful here, because it would be very easy for me to tell you that it was performance, and I do not actually think it was. I think she was genuinely frightened. And I think what she was frightened of was the schedule failing. And I think those two things were completely fused in her mind, and she could not have separated them if you paid her. We're going to be so late. I don't have anybody. Bram's mother can't do it. She's got her thing at 10. Greta, this is not funny. We made this plan 3 weeks ago. We made this plan 8:40. Pilar, of all people. Hi. It's Pilar. We're all a little worried. Just whenever you get this. 9:04. That is the photograph. 9:17. Dennis. His voice is different now, and this is the first message where I can hear something that I recognize, and it is not worry. Did you go somewhere? Did you actually go somewhere? 9:40, my mother. Second message. 22 words. Which for her is a speech. Your sister is standing in the snow with 2 children and nowhere to put them. You've embarrassed me in front of this whole family. I have listened to that 1 more times than the others. Not the whole family. Me. You have embarrassed me. My mother's grandchildren are, in the framing of that sentence, a logistical problem occurring in the snow, and the actual injury is to her standing in a room. 10:02. Kendall. And by now they have gone. Bram took his mother's thing. My mother took the morning. Somebody drove somewhere. It got solved. The way things get solved when the person everyone counts on is not available, and the remaining adults are forced to be adults. It took them about 3 hours to solve a problem they had been telling each other for 3 weeks was unsolvable without me. I want to sit on that for 1 second, because it is the most useful thing in this entire story. They solved it in 3 hours. Every year of my life I had been told, in 100 small ways, that if I said no, something would break. Never in those words. Nobody ever says it in words. It comes through in the way a plan gets described to you, as though the plan is a physical object balanced on one point, and you are the point. It comes through when somebody says we're counting on you in a voice that has a little tremor in it. It comes through in a sentence like, well, I don't know what we'd do. That is the whole engine, not obligation, fear of the breakage. I had believed that engine since I was 11 years old, standing at a bus stop at 3:15 in the afternoon with a house key on a shoelace around my neck. And on the 25th of December, in 3 hours, with no help from me at all. 7 functioning adults with cars and phones and money worked out where to put 2 children on a Friday morning. Nothing broke. Nothing was ever going to break. That was the part I paid 37 years to find out. 10:41. Kendall, and this is the last one before the tone shifts for good. Mom says you went to Hawaii. Is that true, Greta? Is that true? And at 11:15 in the morning, Michigan time, 4 hours after they pulled into my driveway, my brother left message number 23. His voice on this one is flat. All the salesman has gone out of it. This is the voice underneath, and I had heard it maybe twice in my life, once at our father's funeral and once in a hospital parking lot. I'm at the lake. Pause. Wind. He is outside. There's a sign on the 2-track. It's not a for sale sign. Longer pause. Greta, where are you? And what did you do with the house? There is a key under the 3rd flower pot on the back step. There has been a key under that flower pot since 2010. At some point between 8 and 9 in the morning, my sister went around the side of my house, lifted the pot, and let herself in. I know she did because message number 26 at 11:50 is her standing in my kitchen. You can hear the room. You can hear the furnace and the clock over the stove that ticks, and the particular hollow sound a person's voice makes in a house with nobody in it. She says there's an envelope on the table. Then there is a rustling, then a long silence, 10 or 11 seconds, which is a very long time in a voicemail. Then she says, "It's the schedule." She photocopied the schedule. Another pause. Both sides. She photocopied both sides. And then my sister, standing alone in my kitchen on Christmas morning, reads the 3 words I wrote across the bottom of that page out loud, in a voice I have never heard her use. Not my week. She reads it once. Then she says it again, as a question, like maybe it is a code and she has not cracked it. Not my week. Then, very quietly, almost to herself, Greta. What does that mean? I have been asked to explain those 3 words, and I am going to do it once here, and then I am going to leave it alone. For 19 years, I said the same thing every December. Somebody would ask, and I would say sure, and what that meant, every single time, was that the week between the 19th and the 25th was not a thing I owned. It was a thing that got assigned. It belonged to a pool, and other people drew from the pool, and my job was to be in it. In 2026, I closed a bakery for the first time in 19 years, and I told my best friend, at 4 in the morning, standing in a warm room, that I was taking the week, my week. 3 weeks later, there was a laminated page on a refrigerator with 21 boxes on it and my name in every one. So I photocopied both sides of it, and I wrote the correction. That is all it was. It was not a threat, and it was not a riddle. It was a correction, the way you would correct a delivery ticket that had the wrong address on it. And here is why I did not write a letter. A letter can be argued with. A letter has sentences in it, and sentences have soft spots. And my family are people who can find the one soft sentence in 3 pages and build a defense out of it for 6 months. If I had written "I feel taken for granted," then by New Year's the topic would have been my feelings, and whether they were fair, and who else has feelings. And did I know what Kendall has been going through? You cannot argue with a photocopy. That page was not my opinion of them. It was theirs. They made it. They typed it. They printed it. They laminated it. And they put the other side on the same sheet themselves. All I did was take the 2 sides that they had always kept turned away from each other and put them where you could see both at the same time. While Kendall was standing in my kitchen, my brother was driving north. He got to the lake around 10:30. I know that from the timestamp on message 23, and I know the rest from what he said in it and from what came out later. There was no realtor sign at the end of the 2-track. There was never going to be one, because there was no realtor. What was there was a small metal stake with a laminated card in a plastic sleeve, the kind the title company puts out when a survey crew has been on a property. It has the file number on it, and a company name and a phone number, and it is completely unremarkable to anybody who has ever bought or sold a piece of land. Grand Traverse title. Dennis stood at the end of that 2-track in the snow and looked at a card in a plastic sleeve. And I have thought many times about the fact that the thing that finally told my brother what had happened was a laminated sign. He drove down to the house. The doors were locked, which they always are. He looked in the window of the porch. He walked around to the lakeside and down the 14 steps and stood on the dock, on the crib, and then he came back up and sat in his car and made a phone call to my phone, which was in a pocket on an island in the Pacific Ocean. That is message 23, and I told you how it ends. The next one came in 8 minutes later, at 11:23, and it is only 14 words long, and there is no question in it anywhere. You don't get to do that. That house is all of ours. I sat on a balcony 4 nights later and listened to my brother say that sentence. And I looked at the water, and I said out loud, to nobody. In the dark. The only reply I ever made to it. I said, then whose name is on it? Denny. My Aunt Roberta posted it on the 26th at 3 in the afternoon. She did not use my name. She has never used anybody's name in her life. She has been running that particular place since before there was an internet to run it on, and the internet only gave her a bigger porch to run it from. It was 11 paragraphs long. I am not going to read you all of it. It started with a photograph of my grandmother, a good one, from about 1998, on the porch at the lake, squinting in the house dress with the pockets. Then it said, some of us were raised to know that family is the only thing you cannot buy. Then it went into the part about the holidays, about how there is always one in every family. Who decides that their own comfort is more important than the people who raised them? About how children were left standing in the cold on Christmas morning, which is a sentence I want to point at, because nobody was left standing in the cold. 2 bags were set on a step, and 7 adults sorted it out in 3 hours. Then it went into money. Money changes people. Some people wait their whole lives for an old woman to die. Then, near the bottom, the sentence that took me a full day to be able to think about without my hands going cold. I am only grateful that her grandmother did not live to see what she did with the place her husband built with his own 2 hands. 192 likes. 47 comments. I read every one of them, sitting in a plastic chair on a balcony in Kauai at 9 in the morning on the 26th of December, with a cup of coffee going cold on the shimmered table. 9 of the comments were from people I have known my whole life. 3 of them were customers of my bakery. One of them was a woman I sat next to in confirmation class in 1989 who wrote, "Praying for your family, Bobby." Faye called me at 11. "Have you seen it? I've seen it." Okay, so, do you want the report or do you not want the report? Give me the report. Faye is very good at the report. She went into the bakery on the 26th even though we were closed, because there were 2 orders that had to go out for the church. And she talked to 11 people. The Hollins woman from the diner said, and I quote out loud, in front of 2 customers, "That family has been eating that woman alive for 20 years. One wholesale account, a place downtown that had been buying from me since 2019, sent an email canceling the standing order for January. No reason given. I know exactly why, and I am not going to speculate about it out loud. 2 other accounts, both of whom had heard, called and asked if they could add to their order. And one woman came in off the street, a woman Faye did not recognize, and bought a loaf and paid cash and said to Faye on her way out, 'Tell her I did the same thing in '96 and nobody in my family has spoken to me since and I'd do it again.' Then Faye said, 'Are you going to post something?' And I said no. I want to explain that, because at the time, 3 different people told me I was making a mistake, and one of them was my husband. Here is the reasoning. Roberta was not trying to win an argument. She was trying to start one in a place where the rules are hers. On her page, in front of her audience, the currency is who sounds warmest and who has the better photograph of a dead woman. I could have posted the schedule. I could have posted the notebook. I could have posted the deed with the recording stamp on it. And I will tell you honestly that at about 2 a.m. on the 27th I had it photographed and cropped and I was looking at it. But the second I put a document on that porch, it stops being a document. It becomes a move in a fight. And every person reading it gets to decide how they feel about a woman who would post her grandmother's deed on the internet. The paper does not need an audience. The paper needs a county. Emmett came out on the balcony that night with 2 beers and sat down in the other plastic chair. He said, "It's 500 people who don't know you. It's 192. Fine. 192 people who don't know you, and about 9 who do and are being cowards. And 1 diner owner who told the truth in front of witnesses." He put the beer down on the shimmed table and it wobbled. People are loudest exactly where they're weakest. She can't do one thing about that deed, so she's writing paragraphs. I did not say anything. "You know how I know she can't do anything," he said. "Because if there were a legal problem with what you did, you wouldn't be reading about your character. You'd be reading a letter from a lawyer." We sat there for a while and listened to the water. Then my phone lit up on the arm of the chair. It was a text message from a number I did not have saved, with an area block I recognized as Antrim County. 19 words. "Are you Willa Sabo's granddaughter, the one who has the bakery? My name is Delphine Merrick. I knew your grandmother." On the night of the 27th, I sat on that balcony and listened to all 41. In order, start to finish, without skipping one. It took an hour and 9 minutes. Emmett went to bed at 10. I sat out there with the phone on the table and a notepad from the office downstairs, and I wrote down the number and the time of each one. And after some of them I wrote down a word or two. I am not going to give you all 41. I am going to give you the shape of the thing, because the shape is what matters. They come in 4 movements. I did not notice that the first night. I noticed it writing them down. The first movement is logistics, and it runs from 7:04 to about 10. Where are you? Are you at the shop? We need to be somewhere. That is the whole content. In 9 messages, nobody asks if I am all right. The second movement is grievance, and it runs from about 10 until the middle of the afternoon. This is where the word selfish enters, at message 19, from Roberta, who was not even part of the arrangement. This is where Kendall says we made this plan 3 weeks ago for the 3rd time, and it is worth noticing that 3 weeks ago is exactly 16 days before Thanksgiving, which is when the adults-only thread was making the plan I was not in. The third movement is the threat movement. It starts at message 28, at 4 in the afternoon, and it is Dennis, and his voice is back in control, and that is what makes it bad. He says, "I've talked to somebody. There are things you can't just do, even if a piece of paper says you can. An old woman's signature can be looked at. That's all I'm going to say. An old woman's signature can be looked at." I wrote that one down word for word on hotel notepaper with a pen from a drawer, and I circled it. And I did not know then that I was writing down the single most important sentence anybody in my family said in the entire month of December. Message 31 is Bram, trying to be the reasonable one again. Message 33 is Pilar, and it is genuinely kind, and I have never told anybody that. Message 35 is Kendall, and she is not crying anymore, and it is the coldest one of the whole set. And then there is 38, 9:41 at night, Michigan time. My mother. 4th and final message from her. It is 31 seconds long. She is not upset. My mother does not do upset. Her voice is exactly the voice she uses to tell you that a casserole needs another 10 minutes. She says, "I don't know what you think you've accomplished. I don't know who you think you're punishing." Pause. Then she says, "That house was never supposed to end up with just one of you." And then she hangs up. No goodbye. She never says goodbye. I sat forward in that plastic chair on a balcony on the north shore of Kauai and I played it again. Was never supposed to. I want you to hear it the way I heard it on the fourth listen. At 11 at night, with the water going in the dark down past the parking lot. Supposed to. By whom? Not by my grandmother. She sat in an office on Cayuga Street in October of 2009, alone, having driven herself, and declined to split it 3 ways, and had the reason recorded at her own request. So there was somebody else who had a supposed to. Somebody had an intended outcome for that house, and it was not the outcome that was written down, and my mother knew what that intended outcome was well enough to be aggrieved that it had not happened. That is not the sentence of a woman who is surprised. It is the sentence of a woman whose plan did not work. I sat there and I lined up the 3 things I had. And they had been in front of me the whole time, and it took me until 11 at night on a balcony in the middle of the ocean to put them next to each other. 1. An appraisal appointment, requested by D. Sabo, dated the 19th of August, 5 months after she died. 2. My brother, in message 28, saying that an old woman's signature can be looked at, which is a strange thing for a man to say about a document he had just found out existed 9 hours earlier. 3. My mother saying was never supposed to. An appraisal is not a beginning. Nobody starts with an appraisal. An appraisal is what you get when you are already down the road. I got up and went inside and stood in the dark bedroom for a minute. Emmett said, out of the dark, "What? There's something else." "Go to sleep." "Emmett, there's something else. This didn't start in August." I heard him roll over and sit up. I went back out and picked up the phone. It was 11:15 at night in Kauai, which is 4:15 in the morning in Michigan, and I did not care. Because I am a woman who has been awake at 4:15 in the morning every day for 19 years, and I know exactly who else is. I typed 3 words to a number I did not have saved. "Yes, I am." She wrote back in 90 seconds. "Can I call you tomorrow? It is a long story, and I have been carrying it for 2 years. The closing was at 7 in the morning. Kauai time, on the 30th of December. That is 1 in the afternoon in Michigan. Bettina Cruz had asked me twice if 7 was too early, and I told her twice that 7 in the morning is the middle of my day. We put the laptop on the wooden table on the balcony because the light inside was bad and the connection was better near the window. Emmett moved the table twice. The leg with the matchbook under it wobbled every time somebody typed, so in the end he took his flip-flop off and wedged it under there. And that is what the closing was conducted on. I wore the linen shirt. There were 4 windows on the screen. Bettina in the office on Munson Avenue with the mint bowl in the corner of the frame. A notary in a room somewhere in Grand Rapids with a bookshelf behind her. Ruth Ann and Peter Sokol in their daughter's kitchen in Ohio, sitting very close together on 2 chairs pulled up to 1 laptop the way people do when they are not used to it. And me, in a shirt I bought in 2019, on a balcony, at 7 in the morning, with the sound of the water coming up underneath everything. I want to be accurate about how unremarkable it was. The notary asked me to hold my driver's license up to the camera and turn it slightly so she could see the hologram. She asked me my full legal name, my date of birth, and the address of the property. She asked me if I was signing of my own free will and if I understood what I was signing, and I said yes twice. And it did not feel like a movie at all. It felt like a woman doing her job at 1 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. Bettina went through the settlement statement line by line, out loud, because she said she does it out loud for everybody and always will. Sale price, $2,340,000. State and county transfer tax, $20,124. Prorated property taxes, the title insurance premium, recording fees, which are so small compared to everything else on that page that they are almost funny. No brokerage commission. She said that line out loud too, and then she added, not to me, more to the screen in general. That's $140,000 nobody's paying anybody today. And Peter Sokol laughed. There was one more line. Ferris Lance's flat fee for reviewing the agreement, which I had told him to raise, and he had raised by $300 and no more. Then Bettina said, "Okay, warranty deed. Greta, this is the one. I signed it on a wobbling table with a hotel pen because I had not thought to bring one. I want to tell you that my hand shook. It did not. I have iced 200 cakes and written on every one of them, and my hand does not shake for signatures. What I felt was not what I expected. I expected some version of triumph. I had been braced for it. I had been a little afraid of it, because I did not want to be a person who feels triumphant, and I had rehearsed being humble about it. There was no triumph anywhere in the room. There was a strange, flat emptiness that lasted about 4 minutes, and that I did not have a name for at the time. I have one now. It was the feeling of putting down something extremely heavy that you have carried so long that your arms have shaped themselves around it. You do not feel light right away. You feel wrong. Then Ruth Ann Sokol said something that knocked the whole thing sideways. Bettina had said we were finished, and everyone was doing the shuffling that people do at the end of a video call. And Ruth Ann leaned toward her laptop and said, "Can I say one thing? It'll take 10 seconds. Bettina said, of course. Ruth Ann said, "There's a piece of wood over the door into the kitchen. It's about this long. It's got a saying burned into it, and I never could read the whole thing from outside." I said, "It says, 'Wipe your feet or swim home.'" Peter Sokol put his head back and laughed. Ruth Ann did not laugh. She said, "We're not taking it down. I want you to know that. It stays over the door. If we ever sell that house, it stays over the door. And that is where I lost it. On a video call, in front of a notary in Grand Rapids. Not at the signature. Not at the number. At a piece of scrap pine my grandmother burned 6 words into with a soldering iron in about 1974. The wire came through at 4:06 in the afternoon, Michigan time. Emmett was the one who checked, because I would not. He looked at his phone, and then he set it on the table face down, and he said, "It's there." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "Greta, it's there." I heard you. We sat on that balcony for a while. Then he said, "What do you want to do?" I thought about it. And the honest answer surprised me. And I said it out loud. "I'm hungry." So we went and got fish tacos from a truck in a gravel lot next to a hardware store, and we ate them standing up off the tailgate of a rented car on the 30th of December. And neither one of us said one word about money. Delphine Merrick called at 8 in the morning on the 31st, which was 2 in the afternoon where she was. She had a voice like a woman who has spent 40 years reading things out loud to people who are not listening carefully enough. She said, "2 things about me first, so you know how to weigh this. I worked for Ferris Lance 31 years and retired in 2023. I am not a lawyer and never was. I was a legal assistant, which means I typed everything, filed everything, and sat in on more meetings than he did." I said, "Okay." The second thing is that I knew your grandmother before I ever worked in that office. She hemmed my wedding dress in 1984. I sat down on the bed. I sent her a card every Christmas from 2009 until the year before she died. 17 of them. She never sent one back, and I never expected her to, and that is not a complaint. That is just how she was. They're in a drawer in the kitchen, I said. All 17. She kept every one. There was a pause on the line. Well, Delphine said. All right. Then she told me. In January of 2025, my grandmother was in the rehabilitation wing in Kalkaska after a fall, not dying, not confused. She had cracked her hip and she was 90 and she was doing the therapy and complaining about the therapy. Delphine visited on Thursdays. She brought a bakery box from the place on Cedar Street, which is not my bakery, and she was embarrassed about that. On Thursday, the 16th of January, she came at 2 instead of 3, because the roads were bad and she left early. The door of the room was open about a foot. There were 3 people already in there. Your brother was standing at the foot of the bed, she said. Your mother was in the chair on the window side. And there was another woman sitting on the radiator cover. And I did not know her then. But I know now that was your aunt. Roberta. Roberta. Yes. And on the tray table that swings across the bed, there was a document. 2 pages. Blue backing sheet folded back. A pen on top of it. I stood in that hallway with a bakery box, she said. And I did what I should not have done, which is that I did not knock. She heard about 4 minutes of it. She heard my brother explaining, in the patient voice, that this was about protecting the place, that it would keep it in the family, that it would stop it from having to be sold to pay for anything. She heard my mother say that it was what everybody had always understood, and then she heard my grandmother, who had a voice that carried even at 90, say, I know what that is. Delphine stopped and I could hear her drink something. I want to be careful, she said. I saw it from a doorway for a few seconds. But I have prepared several hundred of them, and I know what they look like across a room. It was a quitclaim deed, and the grantee line had a company name on it. I remember because it was long and it did not fit on the line. Sabo Family Legacy, I said. Yes, she said. That is it. Yes, I did not tell her how I knew that. I had seen it once, 3 nights before, at 2 in the morning. In a business search, I ran on a state website out of nothing but a bad feeling. And then I closed the laptop and went to bed and told nobody. She would not sign it, Delphine said. What did she say? And Delphine Merrick, 63 years old, retired legal assistant, said, I am going to give it to you exactly because I wrote it down in my car afterward and I have the paper. She said I already did this 15 years ago in an office in the daytime with a lawyer. Go ask the one who pays for the roof. I put my hand over my eyes and sat on the edge of a hotel bed on an island in the Pacific. The same sentence, 15 years apart, in an office in 2009 to a lawyer with a legal pad, and in a rehabilitation room to 3 people standing over a bed with a pen. Then I knocked, she said. I went in with the bakery box and said hello, and the papers went into a folder inside 10 seconds. And your brother told me it was nice to see me and asked how retirement was treating me. And then they left, and I sat with her for an hour and a half and we talked about her hip. I asked her the question that was going to sit in my chest for a long time. I said, why didn't you tell anyone? And she did not get defensive, and she did not apologize too much. And I have come to respect the answer more the longer I have sat with it. 3 reasons, she said. 1. I was retired. It was not my file. And I was a woman in a hallway who had not knocked. 2. Nothing happened. She was 90 years old and completely herself, and she said no. And the paper went in the folder. There was nothing to report except that a family had been rude in a nursing home, which is not a crime and happens 10 times a day. And the third, Delphine said, is that I asked her, before I left that afternoon I said, Willa, do you want me to say something to Ferris? And she said, no. She said, no. She said, it is already handled. Delphine paused. And she was right. It had been handled since 2009. She put it beyond their reach 15 years before they ever walked into that room, and I think she enjoyed knowing that more than she let on. I cried then. And it was the second time in this whole story, and it was the last. When I could talk, I said, I sold it. Yesterday. The line was quiet. Then Delphine Merrick said one word. Good. The state of Michigan puts its business records on a website that anybody can use for free. You type a name into a box. No login, no reason, no need to be anybody in particular. I say that plainly because people think finding something like this takes a private investigator. It takes a woman in a rented condo with a laptop and 11 minutes. Sabo Family Legacy, LLC, Domestic Limited Liability Company. Filed with the state on the 11th of June, 2025, registered agent, an address in Bel Air. 3 members listed on the annual statement: Dennis A. Sabo, Lorna M. Sabo, Roberta Sabo Lindahl. That is the whole document. It is 2 pages and most of it is boilerplate, and it cost me nothing to look at. Filed the 11th of June, 2025, 5 months after 3 people stood over a hospital bed in Kalkaska with a pen. And 9 months before my grandmother died. They formed the company anyway. That is the piece that I keep coming back to. She said no in January. In June, they went ahead and built the container she was supposed to sign the house into. And then they waited. They waited 9 months. Emmett found the other thing. He had gotten interested by then, and in a way that worried me, because he is not a man who gets interested halfway. He went looking for the appraisal. The appraisal itself would be private, but an appraisal ordered in August on a lake property is ordered for a reason. He found the reason in a place neither of us expected, which is the archive of a weekly real estate advertising sheet that gets printed on newsprint and left in a rack outside the grocery store in Bel Air. Coming soon. Antrim County, Torch Lake, 180 feet of private frontage, Legacy Family Compound. Available spring 2027. There was no address on it. There was no photograph either, which I think was deliberate. There was an agent's name and a phone number. Sonia Vandergrift. I called her on the 2nd of January from Michigan, from my own kitchen, and I told her who I was and what I owned. And to her enormous credit, she did not bluff for 1 second. She said, "Hold on," and I heard a drawer. She had a signed listing agreement dated the 28th of August, 2026. Seller of record Sabo Family Legacy, LLC, signed by Dennis A. Sabo. Member. She had asked for the deed. She told me that twice. She asked in September and again in October, and she was told it was in probate and would be cleaned up by spring, which is a normal thing to be told and a thing she had been told before by people telling the truth. Then she said, "Mrs. Novotny, I need you to understand that I did not list it. There was no sign. There was no listing on the multiple listing service. There was nothing but a coming soon in a shopper because the agreement said spring. I was waiting on a deed I was never going to get." I believed her. I still do. So let me put the whole thing in one place. In order, the way I finally put it on the back of an envelope at my own kitchen table on the 2nd of January, October 2009. Willa Sabo drives herself to Bel Air and signs a deed that keeps her in her house for life and puts one name behind hers. 2017. My mother begins collecting money from my brother and sister, twice a year, for the upkeep of a house whose upkeep is being paid by somebody else. January 2025. 3 people bring a quitclaim deed to a rehabilitation room. She says no. June 2025. They form the company anyway. March 2026. She dies. August 2026. An appraisal is ordered on the property, 5 months later, by a man who does not own it. August 28th, 2026. A listing agreement is signed by a company that does not own it for a sale in the spring. November 2026. A laminated schedule goes up on a refrigerator with my name in 21 boxes. Do you see it? I did not, for a long time. I looked at that list for 2 days before it came apart in front of me. They were not keeping the lake house in the family. They were selling it. That was always the plan. The company was not a way to preserve anything. It was a way to hold title so that 3 people could sign one closing document in the spring and split the money 3 ways. Everything gets divided fair. I heard my mother say that sentence twice in 1 month, and both times I heard it as a piece of family furniture. The kind of thing people say. It was a statement of policy. Fair had been defined in a document filed with the state on the 11th of June, 2025. And there were 3 names in the definition, and mine was not one of them. My sister's was not either. I want to be careful and exact here because this is the only thing in this story that surprised me in a direction that was not worse. Kendall was not a member of that company. Kendall paid in, twice a year, for 9 years, $3,200 at a time by the end, for the upkeep of a place she was never going to own a share of. My mother took her money with one hand and left her off the paperwork with the other. She would have been paid something in the spring, or told there had been costs, or handed a number and no reason to question it. The way she has never questioned any of it. My sister put a laminated page on a refrigerator and typed my name into 21 boxes, and I will not pretend that is nothing. But she was in the second circle, not the first, and she did not know it. She called me on the 4th of January at 9 at night, and it was the only call I took all week. I want to back up 5 days, because I skipped New Year's and I do not want to skip it. The 1st of January on the north shore of Kauai was 79 degrees and overcast in the morning, and then nothing happened that day. That is why I am telling you about it. We got up at 6:30, which for me is sleeping in by 3.5 hours, and we walked. There is a stretch of beach about 1.5 miles long there, where the sand goes from gold to nearly black in one section because of what is under it. And you can stand with 1 foot on each. Emmett found a piece of coral he liked and carried it the whole way and then put it back down. The chickens are everywhere. Nobody tells you that. There are wild chickens in every parking lot on that island, and they have no fear of anybody. And there was a rooster on the hood of our rental car at 7 in the morning who looked me directly in the eye and did not move until I got within 3 feet of him. We got coffee from a plywood stand on the side of the road, run by a man who took 12 minutes to make 2 cups and would not be hurried. And I want to tell you that I stood in that line and did not get impatient once. That is the part I have not been able to explain well to anybody. It took my body 4 days to believe it. The first 2 mornings I woke up at 2:40 on the dot, Kauai time, because that is what my body does. And I lay there in the dark with my heart going and a list running. 62 loaves. The Kelseys want 12 rolls. Is the starter up over the line? And then it would arrive. in stages, that there was no bench, no oven, no van, nothing, and I would lie there and feel almost sick with it. The third morning I woke up at 4. The fourth morning I woke up at 6:15, and I lay there and listened to the water, and I did not make a single list. Emmett got burned across the shoulders on the second day because he does not believe in sunscreen the way some men do not believe in doctors, and he was miserable and would not admit it. And I bought him aloe at a drugstore, and he said it was fine. It was not that bad. And then he slept on his stomach for 3 nights. Faye texted on the 30th, "The shop is fine. Everything went out." Also, I raised the price of the country loaf 50 cents, because we have been underpricing it since 2023, and you know it. Do not fight me on this. I did not fight her on it. She was right. She has been right about that for 3 years. I sent her the picture I promised on Christmas Day from the balcony at 6:30 in the evening. It is not a good photograph. It is the rail, and a plastic chair, and part of the water, and my own foot in the corner, because I did not know what else to put in it. She wrote back 1 line, and I have not deleted it. 19 years. Look at your foot. And then, on the morning of the 2nd of January, before we flew home, Ruth Ann Sokol sent me something. She had asked, back in December, whether it would be all right if she and Peter went and looked at the outside of the house before the closing. Not inside. She was very specific about that. She said, "I do not want to walk through it while it is still yours." They drove up from Ohio on the 29th, in the snow, and parked at the end of the 2-track and walked in. The picture was taken from the road, from about the same place as the one in the 2019 letter, which she did not do on purpose and did not notice until I told her. The blue spruce, in snow, at dusk, 50 feet of it, leaning 6 degrees toward the water, and somebody had put lights on it, not on the whole tree. Around the bottom 8 feet, 1 strand, warm white, the way you would do it if you had 1 strand in the trunk of the car and a pair of cold hands. Underneath the photograph she wrote, "Peter had a strand in the car from his mother's. I hope you do not mind. We will do it every year. If you would like a picture of this tree every December for as long as we are alive, say the word and it is yours." I sat on the edge of a bed in a rented condo 4,200 miles from that tree, and I looked at it for a long time. There is a version of this story where that is the moment I feel warm about everything, and I want to be honest and say that is not quite what happened. What I felt was the loss. I lost that house. I want to say that clearly because I think there is a way of telling this where I come out of it having only one. And that is not true, and it would be a cheap thing to tell you. I sold the place where I learned to swim to strangers, and I did it on purpose, and it was the right thing to do, and it cost me something that does not come back. Both of those are true at once. That is what nobody tells you about a boundary. You do not get to draw one for free. The tree is not mine anymore. It is theirs, and it has lights on it. And it is going to keep being photographed every December by a retired choir director who wrote 11 letters to a woman who never wrote back. I typed 1 word and sent it. Please. We landed in Detroit at 6 in the morning on the 6th of January and got home to Traverse City at 11:30 at night. The bags were gone off the front step. The wreath was still on the storm door. The envelope was still on the kitchen table, open. The photocopy pulled halfway out and set back down at an angle. The new deed was recorded at the Antrim County Register of Deeds on the 2nd of January at 9:40 in the morning, while I was on an island looking at a picture of a tree. Here is what happened after, and I am going to give it to you flat because none of it is dramatic, and I think that is the point. My mother has not called me. Not once. She has not written either. And when we have been in the same building, she has been perfectly polite, in the way she is polite to the woman who does her hair. She will not have this conversation. She was never going to. My mother's entire method is to speak past a thing until it dies of neglect. And she is applying that method to her oldest daughter. And I am not going to be the one who breaks first, because I have been the one who breaks first for 51 years. Roberta deleted the post in the second week of January. No apology. She has not spoken to me. I found out it was gone because Faye told me. Dennis sent a lawyer's letter in February. It came certified 2 pages. It used the phrase undue influence, referred to a vulnerable adult, and demanded that I preserve all documents relating to the property. Ferris Lance sent a reply that was 1 page. He attached a certified copy of the recorded deed with the October 2009 stamp on it, and his own file memorandum from the same date, noting that the client presented a loan, drove herself, declined to divide the property, and stated a reason. He noted that the instrument had stood on the public record for 17 years, that his client lived another 16 years and was competent through all of them, and that the period for a challenge of the kind described had long since run. He also noted, and I asked him about this sentence afterward to be sure I understood it, that a claim of undue influence has to be made against somebody who was in the room, and that his file reflected that no one else was. The lawyer withdrew in March. There was no lawsuit. There was never going to be one. There was a letter, and a 1-page answer, and then nothing. That is what it looks like when paper is on your side. It is not a courtroom. It is an envelope. Kendall I saw in the grocery store parking lot on Munson in the middle of February. Neither of us planned it. She was putting a cart back, and I was walking in, and we stood between 2 rows of cars in the wind for about 6 minutes. She said she did not know about the company. I asked 3 questions about it and watched her face while she answered. And I believe her. She had paid in twice a year since 2017, and had never once seen a receipt or a bank statement. And when I asked her why, she said, because Mom asked. Because Mom asked. There it is. There is the whole family in 3 words. And it turns out it was never only me. Then she said, "So, can we start over?" And I said no. I had thought about it for 6 weeks and I got it right, which almost never happens. I said, "Kendall, I believe you about the company. You didn't know. I'm not holding that against you." She said, "Okay." I said, "But you knew about the schedule." She started to say something, and I let her get 4 words in. "You wrote it 16 days before Thanksgiving. You told them not to send it to me first, because I'd find a reason. You put my name in 21 boxes and you laminated it so it couldn't be changed. And then you put your own party on the back of the same page. Nobody made you do that. Mom didn't ask you to do that. And my sister stood in a grocery store parking lot in February and could not answer me. And after a while she said, 'It wasn't like that.' And I said, 'It was exactly like that. I have the page.' That is where it ended." She put the card in the rack and I went inside. We are not estranged, exactly. We are something with no good word for it. She texts me on my birthday. I answer. People told me I went too far, several people. One of them was a woman at church who I like. What they mean is that I could have said something smaller. I tried the smaller thing 3 times. 2011, from a cabin in Ohio, I said. "Can it wait 4 days?" It could not. And we drove home. 2016, 3 weeks after my father's funeral. I said, "I need a couple of months." I got 11 days. 2019. I said, "I can't do Christmas Eve this year." And my mother said, Well, we'll figure something out. In a voice with a crack in it. And by the 20th, I was doing Christmas Eve 3 times. Every one of them swallowed inside one season. Here is what I learned. And it is not advice. It is only what happened to me. If somebody treats you as a function instead of a person, a small boundary reads to them as a scheduling problem. They route around it the way water routes around a stone. They are not being evil. They do not experience it as a refusal, because in their model of the world you do not have refusals in you. The only thing that registers is a boundary they cannot route around. I did not want to be a woman who sold a house to be heard. I was a woman who could not be heard any other way. It is December again. I am sitting at the desk in the office at the back of the bakery, and it is 4:15 in the afternoon, which a year ago would have been the middle of my night. I want to tell you what the money did, because people always want to know, and because the honest answer is duller than anybody expects. It paid off the equipment loan on the deck oven and the proofer, which had 11 years left on it. It bought this building, which I had been renting since 2007 from a man in Florida who raised it every time the lease came up. It went into a retirement account, which I did not have, at 51, after 26 years of working. The rest of it sits where it is, and I do not touch it. There is no boat. There is no second house. Emmett drives the same truck and complains about the same thing on it. Here is what actually changed, and it is not on any statement. I hired 2 people in January, a young man who does the overnight bench, and a woman who does deliveries and the front. Payroll went up 11%, and I lost sleep over it for about 6 weeks. I have 2 days off a week now, Sunday and Monday. Faye is not my employee anymore. She is a partner, 30%, papered by Ferris Lance in April. And she cried in the parking lot, and then told me the price of the country loaf was going up again. I sleep until 5:30 most days. My body still does not entirely believe it. That is what $2,340,000 bought. It bought Sunday. The tree picture came in on the 4th of December. Same angle from the road. More snow this year. The one strand of warm white around the bottom 8 feet. Ruth Ann wrote, "Second year, still leaning." Peter says the boathouse hinge is a 1941 design, and he has told 4 people about it. Delphine Merrick calls the first Sunday of every month. She is 64 now. She has told me 11 things about my grandmother that I did not know, and I am not going to repeat any of them here, because they are mine. Emmett is at the marina until 5, and then he is home. Those are the people I have Christmas with: a husband, a business partner, a retired legal assistant on speakerphone, and 2 school teachers I have met exactly once, in Ohio, in June, at a lunch that lasted 4 hours. That is a family. I did not pick it out of a catalog, and I did not lose the other one on purpose. But that is what it is, and I would not trade it back. I think about my grandmother a lot at this time of year. 90 years old, in a rehabilitation room in Kalkaska, with a cracked hip and 3 people standing over the bed and a pen on the tray table. She could have signed it. It would have been easier. She would have gotten a nicer January. She said, "Go ask the one who pays for the roof." She never once said that to me. Not in 51 years. She never said thank you for the septic. She never said, "I know what you do." She never sat me down and told me she had put my name on that deed and why. I do not think that was coldness. I think she was a woman born in 1934 who did not have those sentences available to her. And so she did the only thing she did have, which was to drive herself to Bel Air on a Tuesday in October and make it permanent in writing. That is a love letter. It is a 2-page love letter with a recording stamp on it, and it took me 17 years to open the envelope. So here is what I have. And it is not wisdom. It is just true. I did not take anything from anybody. Nothing was ever theirs. Not 1 square foot of it. Not one day of that week in December. Not one of the 19 Christmases. They did not lose an inheritance. They lost access to a woman who had been saying yes since she was 11 years old. And they had built a great deal on top of the assumption that she always would. And people do lose things that way. Permanently. Not because somebody took revenge on them, but because the person they were treating as a function turned out to be a person the whole time. And one day the person got up and went somewhere. If you are listening to this and some part of it sounded like your own kitchen, I am not going to tell you what to do. I do not know your family and I am not qualified to run your life. I will only tell you the one thing I wish somebody had told me at 30. Say it out loud once, to one person, before you have a plan. That is all. Not to the people who need something from you. Say it to a friend at 4 a.m. in a warm room, the way I said it to Faye, and listen to how it sounds when it is outside your body. I am taking the week. That is the whole sentence. It took me 51 years to say it and 11 words to say it in. And my sister thought I was tired and hung up the phone. The bakery closes on the 20th again this year. We are going back to Kauai. Same building, 2nd floor, end unit. Emmett already asked about the table with the bad leg. I am going to sit in that plastic chair. And I am going to put my phone face down on a towel. And this time when I turn it back on, there will be 4 or 5 messages on it. And every single one of them will be from somebody who is glad I went.